If you feel like you have a business that could benefit from some free advertising, we have a deal for you. Mark your calendars, 9 a.m. Thursday, January 26th. You go to civicmedia.us/million. And even if you hear one of the other hosts say it, I'm nicely asking you that you say, well, Jane and Kristen from As Goes Wisconsin sent me, of course. Obviously. Of course.
Moving Wisconsin forward, one joke at a time, this is Kristen Bry with As Goes Wisconsin.
Yada, yada, yada.
Hello, Wisconsin!
Hello, Wisconsin. Hello, Wisconsin Rapids, Oshkosh, Green Bay, Wausau, Amory, Richland Center, our home base of Waukesha. Hello to everyone streaming or listening to on our radio. And hello to anyone listening to the podcast. And a very happy Monday to you, Jane Metnair.
And back to you, Kristen Bry. We have sunshine.
It's sunny again.
It's bizarre.
And last week was very gray.
So enjoy it, people.
Yeah.
Looks nice.
It does look nice. The sun, even when it's a little bit colder, the sun is helpful.
It's a good thing.
The vitamin D,
Mm-hmm.
The mood altering thing for those of us who, I'm not going to say I have seasonal depression, but it's hard not to feel a little like hibernating this time of year, no matter, even though we have no snow. We have a dusting of snow.
Yeah. Little atmospheric snow.
All right. Well, for today, Monday, January 23rd, after the bottom of the half hour, we are going to do a tale of two marches and talk a little bit about both the March for Life that happened on Friday and then the Women's March that happened, the national one that happened in Madison, but there was marches, I think I read, in 46 states. And, the core theme of both being on the opposite side of the same coin. So we're going to talk about that. And then at the end of this hour, if you didn't know, all that time that we thought K-Cups were just terrible for the environment, apparently we were wrong.
I'm stunned.
Still doesn't make it taste any better, but it maybe is not as wasteful as we thought it was. But to start off today, I feel like we can't not talk about what happened in California yesterday. It's happened on Saturday night, and so news was circulating yesterday. But if you are not aware of what happened, thousands of people were out celebrating Lunar New Year's Eve in Monterey Park, which is a majority Asian American city that's just east of Los Angeles. And during that, on Saturday night, 10 people were killed and another 10 were injured when a gunman opened fire in a ballroom dance studio. And on Sunday, the police found a suspect who had died of a self-inflicted wound, which is a 72-year-old man. I'm not going to be able Hu Can Tran, in Torrance. And the van that he was in fit a description that it sounds like also tried to go to a different ballroom.
Yes, where they disarmed him.
And so as awful as this is, it could have been worse, which is terrible. And they haven't discovered any kind of motive yet. He's with him being dead. I don't know how. Yeah, I don't even know where police usually begin as they start to piece this together once someone commits something like this and then kills himself.
But you talk to the remaining family members, I would assume.
He's 72.
That's where you start. See now, and I've seen some things from some overseas publications, in particular the Daily Mail, which is questionable because it's tabloid.
Aren't they kind of like our New York Post?
Yeah, they're kind of tabloidy, but at the same time, they break things pretty frequently. And they at least are reporting that this was a domestic incident and that he was looking either for his wife or his ex-wife. Again, I have not seen this confirmed by anybody else, but this is some of the reports from overseas, from the Daily Mail.
And, it's because there was already trepidation because there has been in the same vein of seeing an increase in anti-Semitic acts and violence. We've also, obviously, since the pandemic has seen an increase in anti-Asian hate. And so I think with this is like the biggest, I think, in the country, biggest Lunar New Year party celebration fair in the country, because Monterey is a majority Asian American city. It's the first city in the continental US to have a majority of residents with Asian ancestry all in one place. Of its 60,000 residents, 65% are of Asian descent. And so it was just, it was an area that is like the Chinese culture hub of San Gabriel Valley. And they haven't had it for 2 years. And so I guess it was, reports are saying there's people who were very excited to do this in real life.
Sure.
But also because of like a rise of anti-Asian hate, there was trepidation as far as what could happen. And, and I was thinking about this morning because I figured we couldn't not talk about it. And because I don't usually live in fear. Like, I'm the jerk who's like, I'll walk home with my headphones on. And, it's like, I typically live in probably the naivete of like, nothing bad's ever going to happen. And even for me this morning, of looking at some of the pictures of what was set up for the celebration, and I think of how many street festivals in Milwaukee I went to last year, and I thought about, Brady Street Fest, of like thousands of people in differing levels of sobriety and everything, but like the energy that gets captured there. I was thinking of Summerfest. I was thinking of so many of like Milwaukee specifically being the city of festivals, right? And so many times that this scene plays out. And at what point does the continuation of just these things happening fall under some kind of terrorism, because of the fact that, like, and it's not an organized, they're always lone wolves. It's always one-off people that are not coordinating with each other. But as far as some of the definition of terrorism being like, you alter your behavior, it forces people to change how they live their lives. Like, the more and more people who feel like going to a 4th of July event and parade, going to a Christmas parade, going to a Lunar New Year's Eve fair, like these things that continue to happen, because it is the 23rd of January. It's the 33rd mass shooting of this year.
Unreal. The 33rd.
The 33rd. And I don't even know most of them. I mean, this feels like, because this is the biggest one. This is the biggest one. This is the deadliest one since Uvalde. And the other 32 that have happened in 2023 so far, I don't even know if they made the news. Really, didn't come across my radar. Well,
there's one that I can think of right off the top of my head that may not have crossed your screen, but there was a guy in Utah who killed his wife, his mother-in-law, and their 3 children, and then killed himself. And what was kind of shocking about this was the obituary that was left for him talked about what a great guy he was.
Really?
And yeah, and how good he was with his kids. And he killed his entire family and then killed himself.
I feel like you forfeit the right to have an obituary at that point.
And there was no mention of the victims. There was no acknowledgement that he is the one who killed his entire family.
Did they get obituaries?
I'm sure they had separate obituaries, but nowhere in his obituary did it mention that he slaughtered his entire family. And I think one of the core things that we need to talk about with these mass shootings and these family killers is this male attitude that they are in the right to do this.
Well, I saw this weekend, Crystal Ball, she's like a progressive. Now she has her own show on YouTube, but I think she worked for The Hill for a while. She's kind of like a progressive left-wing pundit person. And it was on her Instagram, and she goes, "Hey, ABC News, I corrected it for you." Because ABC News had published a headline that said, more insight on what drives men to kill their wives. To feel like they have to kill their wives or something like that. And she called out like, what drives men to kill their wives? I forgot how she changed it, but it's like the phrasing of that headline makes it seem like there's a justification for what drives men to do abhorrent, violent, illegal, deadly things against the women they love. And that it's somehow, again, always our fault.
Well,
because we're so whatever. Yeah, I mean,
I just find that is at the core of so much violence. And we know that domestic violence has been on the rise the last couple of years. And now with the proliferation of guns, far more of these cases end up fatal.
well, and just to bring it back to Wisconsin, I mean, last year, the Supreme Court of Wisconsin, because of a loophole, because of the boyfriend loophole, and how misdemeanors are filed of domestic violence in Wisconsin, you can have an abuse charge, a domestic abuse charge against you, and still be able to own a firearm. And that has to be, and even the liberal justices last year, because I think it was voted on unanimously, and I know Karofsky and some of the other liberal judges in their opinion wrote basically like the law is the law, and we can't, like, this has to be fixed in the legislature.
Right.
And of course
Which they won't do.
No. But the other thing is a kind of mystery around this is, how did he get the gun? Because those guns are not legal in California. And, I can just hear it now as far as the gun rights people saying, see, doesn't even matter if you ban it because people are going to do it. People are going to do what they want. So you need to be able to protect yourself and blah, blah, blah. And so, so my condolences. I mean, I think all my friends who were talking about this yesterday, it's just tragic no matter where. I mean, like, how do you not get numb to it?
Well, and it's normal now. This is living in America now.
Well,
33
in 23 days.
In 23 days. It's amazing. It's horrifying.
Well, when we come back, what does the Year of the Rabbit actually mean? Still a little bit on topic, but maybe a little bit more educational and celebratory as far as what the Lunar New Year is and what the changing from the Year of the Tiger to the Rabbit actually means. This is As Goes Wisconsin.
Wish it was Sunday. That's my fun day. I don't have to run day. It's just another manic Monday. Wish it was Sunday. That's my fun day. It's just another manic Monday.
Work, the kids' practices, household errands. Seems like every hour's rush hour at our house. But no matter how busy things get, we still make balanced nutrition a priority with help from Country Hearth Natural Breads. Whole grains and other natural ingredients are carefully blended and baked into delicious, nutritious breads like Dakota-style 12-grain, multi-grain, and 100% whole wheat. There's a Country Hearth favorite for everyone in the family. Country Hearth Breads, baking our best for you.
Hey, this is Jim Santel. I am the host of Morning Cannolis. Every single Saturday morning from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., we talk about the major stories in law, in government, and the aspiration for justice in America. Delighted to have you join, call in, and be a part of our discussion right here on the networks of Civic Media.
My Alzheimer's diagnosis was hard to take.
But early detection allowed us to take control of the situation together.
Talk to your family about seeing a doctor. Go to alz.org/time to talk. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
Missed your favorite show live on air? It's easy to find what you enjoy wherever you listen to podcasts, including Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts. And we're always streaming on TuneIn and the Civic Media app.
Here's your updated forecast on the Shaw. A blend of clouds and sun this afternoon with daytime highs approaching 31. Southwest winds 10 to 15 miles an hour. A few flurries possible at times tonight. Lows level off around 24. Cloudy skies expected. High temperatures reach up to 32. Tomorrow, cloudy skies with a few peaks of sun. 1 to 3 inches of snow Wednesday through Wednesday night. For Civic Media, I'm meteorologist Eric Height. Currently, it's 23 degrees.
A progressive voice from Beaver Dam to Kenosha. WAUK 540 AM. Always streaming at WAUKradio.com.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin with Kristen Bry. We got Jane Matnair on the board. As always, you can join the conversation at 844-967-2789. And I thought, as we sometimes try to culturally expand what we know beyond our own cultures, that instead of dwelling more, because I don't know if there's much more to say about the shooting that happened, the mass shooting, the 33rd mass shooting in 23 days that happened Saturday night in Monterey Park. Instead, to learn a little bit more about the Lunar New Year and what the Year of the Rabbit actually is. And so this is a celebration that globally, more than 1 billion people in East Asia and their diasporas celebrate.
It's huge.
It's huge. And so the festivities are widely popular in China and are considered the largest annual human migration as millions return home to celebrate with family.
Go back to their small villages and from all the big cities, I guess?
Because I guess this was part of the concern as the very beginning of COVID, because this basically happened in China as everyone was going home. And I think as people were trying to get back, if I remember correctly, is kind of what was unfolding in China as the very start of COVID. It was like the spread was aligned with how many people were traveling during this time to celebrate. And so it's linked to the repeating 12-year Chinese zodiac cycle. And so this last year was the year of the tiger, and now it is the year of the rabbit. And that is a sign, ironically, that symbolizes peace and prosperity. And so it's more specifically the water rabbit. This would actually be fascinating to learn more about the crossover of the zodiac signs like Gemini and Taurus and water versus fire, because as I'm reading this, it's the water rabbit. So is that similar to like the water signs in the more Americanized? Is it just Americanized? I don't know. I know that I'm a Gemini, and I know that Geminis are spicy. That's about as much as I know. And so it's the water is supposed to designate like different nature's elemental forces, which I think is also similar to what we think of as water and air and fire signs and earth signs. And so in China, the celebrations follow the lifting of the country's zero. So not only was it the first time in Monterey Park that they were celebrating, but it's also China's had this zero COVID policy. Yeah. And so it was the first time in a long time they've been able to celebrate. And so I just thought, yes. And so it was, I have heard less of as far as things that are happening in China with this, but I just thought it'd be interesting. Do you know what year you were born in? Like the year?
I'm a rat. Year of the rat.
Oh.
Yeah.
Do you know what that's supposed to symbolize?
I'm sure I gnaw on things. No. I don't know. But yeah, it could be, there's so many other snake and tiger and dog. And yeah, I got the rat.
You got the rat.
I got the rat.
Well, it also is funny because I think they all have their positive spins, but it's just we put our own connotations of those animals and what they actually mean. Because 1986 was, mine sounds a lot cooler. I'm just going to be honest. Mine was the year of the fire tiger.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. It's tough to make rats cool. Except for like Ratatouille.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of other rat.
Ben, which is way before your time.
What's Ben?
Ben was a horror movie starring a rat, and Michael Jackson sang the theme song.
What was the theme song?
Ben.
I've never even heard of this.
Oh, I will dig that up for you.
So wait, the movie's called Ben, and then the theme song was also called Ben, and it was sang by Michael Jackson?
Yes, and it's a movie about a rat.
And was the rat like
not adorable?
A huge rat? Was it like a human-sized rat? Or?
No, it was a regular rat size, but he has many companions to try to take over.
Well, I think that is still to this day one of the most terrifying. This is really going off the rails, but one of the most terrifying rat scenes I've ever seen. Well, there's certainly one. Oh, what movie is it? Someone's going to correct me on the text line, but there's not the one that the original one that I'm thinking of is in Bone Collector with Angelina Jolie and I think Denzel Washington, when it's a serial killer and he basically leaves someone with like, because I guess rats are attracted to blood.
Mm-hmm.
And like a swarm of rats, there's just a scene of them getting just like devoured by a rat.
Yeah, that's kind of horrible.
But then there was also a movie, I want to say it was like Snatch or Smoking Barrels.
It was a Ritchie.
It was a Guy Ritchie. I think it's a Guy Ritchie movie where they are torturing a guy and they put a rat in a bucket on this guy's stomach.
Oh,
and then they start to like heat up the bucket. So the rat starts freaking out. I'm sorry. This is a really bad way to start a Monday show. Let's change the subject.
Well,
let's hear more about a fire tiger.
Yes. Let's talk about the good things about fire tigers and fire tiger films.
All right. So I'm just trying to find the personality of a tiger. Let's talk about that. Tigers are accustomed of inhabiting vast lands. I think this is actually an actual tiger, not anything to do with.
But you know,
this has totally gone off the rails.
But I did talk to a zoologist last year, as a matter of fact, about qualities of tigers. And so they're bold, you know, they have their big stripes on them, so they don't hide, they don't shy away from things.
But it's always interesting to me. Like I am someone who definitely, when I read what a Gemini is, or when I read my Myers-Briggs type, I recognize myself inside of it. But it's also hard for me to totally buy into, especially for a full year, that everyone born in that year shares common traits,
right?
Let alone everyone born in the same 30-day time slot shares certain traits. And so I have mixed feelings about how much when you were born actually says about you and like dictates your life. But I do identify with all the Gemini descriptors.
I share a birthday with Richard Nixon.
See? Exactly. Well, I don't know. Maybe there's some commonalities that you just haven't thought of yet. All right. When we come back, a tale of two marches. This is As Goes Wisconsin.
WAUK 540 AM, New Berlin's choice for news talk radio. Streaming 24/7 at WAUKradio.com.
CBS News brief. People in Monterey Park, California, dealing with the aftermath of a mass shooting.
I feel this sense of great loss about the home that I always had. It's just gone. I'll never be able to feel safe here again.
10 people were shot and killed in the attack in the dance studio. Police say the suspect took his own life later. The FDA is moving this week to set the wheels in motion for updated COVID vaccine shots later on this year. Infectious disease expert Dr. William Schaffner.
It's not a question of whether or not we ought to do this. We need to do it. The question really is, how can we do it in the most effective fashion?
CBS's Vicki Barker on a new survey out today.
3 months ago, 2 out of 3 private sector or trade industry association executives believed a recession was coming, if not already here. But the latest survey by the National Association of Business Economics finds that proportion has dropped to 56%.
CBS News Brief. I'm Steve Kathan.
WAUK 540 AM. Brookfield's choice for news talk radio. Streaming 24/7 at WAUKradio.com.
For Civic Media, I'm Jane Madner with your headlines. More than 1,000 workers in Racine, Burlington, and in Iowa getting back on the job after a 9-month strike. United Auto Workers Union members were fighting for raises to help cover soaring inflation and increases in healthcare costs. Based in the United Kingdom, CNH Industrial employs more than 37,000 people around the world. Their third quarter profits jumped 22% last year to $559 million. No one was hurt when blades in the top portion of a wind turbine collapsed at the Butler Ridge Wind Farm in Dodge County near Herman on Wednesday night. However, there is a large crater from the impact. NextEra Energy Resources owns the turbine and is working to determine the cause of the collapse, as well as ensure the other turbines on the property are safe. You're listening to The Shaw, 101 FM, WAUK 540 AM.
What are the governor's priorities for Wisconsin? Tony Evers will lay out his second-term plans during his State of the State address January 24th. You can hear it live on your local civic media radio station. Will abortion rights, Medicaid expansion, and legalizing marijuana be the top issues? Your favorite hosts also provide insight by breaking down the governor's address. The State of the State address live Tuesday, January 24th at 7 p.m. here on your local civic media radio station, streaming on the Civic Media app.
Hey, this is Jim Santel. I am the host of Morning Cannolis. Every single Saturday morning from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., we talk about the major stories in law, in government, and the aspiration for justice in America. Delighted to have you join, call in, and be a part of our discussion right here on the networks of Civic Media.
You've got questions about navigating the healthcare system? Kristen Lyerly helps us find answers and discusses other issues at the intersection of healthcare and politics. Hometown Health, Thursday mornings at 7:30 on Up North News Radio.
Here's a fun fact for you. The average chameleon can point their eyes in 2 different directions. On the other hand, the average human can't. So unless you're a chameleon, there's absolutely no way you can focus on texting and driving at the same time. So don't do it, unless you're a chameleon.
Visit StopTextsStopWrecks.org. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin on the Civic Media Network. I am Kristen Bry. She is Jane Matnair. No matter where you're listening, thank you for tuning in. Reminder that if you miss any part of today's show, if you're listening to it live right now, you can always go back and listen to it as a podcast, which you can find on asgoeswisconsin.com/listen or wherever you find podcasts. And you can always join the conversation at 844-967-2789. So, A Tale of Two Marches. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. So, because it was the 50th, or would have been, I mean, I guess, is it either way? It's the 50th anniversary of Roe because it was 50 years, even though Roe is not the law of the land anymore.
I think it was.
So, Sunday marked the 50th anniversary of the now scrapped SCOTUS decision that granted the federal right to an abortion. And on Friday, so 2 days prior to that, the annual pro-life anti-abortion march in DC, March for Life, happened. And it was their first big event since Dobbs came down. And then yesterday, across the country, the Women's March had their national marquee event right here in Wisconsin, in Madison.
Mm-hmm.
But across 46 states, there was 200 different events in total, or something around that. And both centered on the same topic, basically, that of being access to or limiting access to abortion. And did you know anyone who went to the one in Madison?
I didn't.
I think I saw some things on social media of some people I know who were there.
There were about 1,000. I think there was a crowd of about 1,000.
Yeah, everything I've read, it was more than 1,000, but maybe not more, over 2,000. It was cold.
Yeah, it was cold.
And so some of the pictures that came out, Milwaukee Journal Sentinel got some good pictures. Mike DeSisti. There's a great picture of everyone in the rotunda. Not, being calm, but still that was where the speakers were and everything. And The New York Times got some good pictures and a video of people marching down State Street. And it was more interesting to me. I think it's almost like things have flipped a little bit.
In what way?
In the way of, like, especially for those of us in Wisconsin who now who are living under basically complete abortion ban, and it becomes a motivator, I think, for so long for people who were not paying attention, who never thought this was going to happen, and then it did happen. So it's activated potentially more people, because overall, majority of people want access, think people should have access to some abortion care. Some people, the numbers dwindle when you frame it as abortion at any time for any reason. But as far as especially first trimester, and in the case of the mother, and in rape and incest, and like all these different exceptions,
Right.
Most people believe that, at least where we stand right now in Wisconsin, should not be the law. And I think there becomes now, on the pro-choice side, more of a target versus what's switched, what it sounds like, for the March for Life, in the different articles I read and the different interviews that people gave of being in March for Life, where they don't have a target anymore.
Oh, I think they do.
I think they do, but I think it's
they want a national abortion.
I don't think they're as organized, though.
Yeah, but they want a national abortion ban. And they want to get rid of contraception too. They do.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, before they would end the march at the steps of the Supreme Court. And this year they ended it at the Capitol. But it's like, what is the legislation? What is, like, I'm saying in the sense that it's not that there's not some who want that, but I don't know if that is the messaging that has trickled down to everyone who showed up there on Friday.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I think the precision and the this is what we are going after. And before, they were just going after getting judges appointed at the different levels of the judicial system who were Catholic and Christian and conservative.
And from the Federalist Society.
Yes. And that was the, like, eye on the prize goal. And they got it, right? They got it. And now it becomes, because you just read this, the one that I read that I was going to reference. I read a couple of different ones, but the one is from Slate, which obviously is definitely much more of a left-leaning outlet. But in the different conversations they were having with all these different leaders, you know, some people were talking about how we need to support women so much that they don't even think that they have to have an abortion. And that includes things that we probably all could get on board with, which is like better, like parental leave, more flexible hours, like improving the adoption system, improving the foster care system, and things that, like, we could probably all actually agree on. It's like, let's make it a more hospitable environment to have children in. But then some are talking about a contraceptive ban. Some are talking about a national abortion ban. Some are talking about leaving it up to the states. Like, there's less of a distinct, this is the messaging.
This is what's
Go
next.
forth.
This is what's next.
And there's more of a disparate, depending on which leader you talk to, of what the goal becomes, which is maybe because, I mean, it also just goes to the fact that if it goes back to the states, now you have to have a disparate, decentralized movement. And
that's why I think the next focus is going to be a national abortion ban. And to take it away, as much as they claim states' rights.
No, I know. But I mean, at least for the time being, it's not going to happen in the next 2 years.
True. But they play the long game.
They do play the long game. But it's also just interesting because how this article ended was just talking about how they've, in their pursuit of their single, like blinders on pursuit of overturning this in the courts, how much they've lost in the eyes of public opinion. Now, this is not a popular opinion to have of where they stand, right? And that could be part of why they are so disorganized right now, And it's like, this is the quote. Said, the lack of focus objective may be a result of a simple post-Roe reality. The pro-life movement finally achieved what it had been trying to do on the judicial front for so long, only to find it had failed miserably on the popular front. Because I don't think they have the numbers.
They don't have the numbers in the courts?
No, I don't think they have the numbers as far as, like, think about what happened in November. Like, most pundits point to the overturning of Roe limiting what the red wave wasn't, right? And if it was up, this is why right now, if we think about what happened last week in the amendments and the referenda that's going to be on the ballot in Wisconsin in April. And so that was voted on with our Republican legislature. So one is going to be a constitutional amendment on cash bail. And we as voters are going to be able to vote whether or not we want to change how cash bail works in Wisconsin and basically give more discretion to judges. Because right now how cash bail works is it's simply used as a flight risk. Is being like it's meant to be there as an attempt to get people to come back and show up for court. This change would allow basically them being judges, to apply bail and high bail based on just how violent they feel like the offender is. And we're going to have Jessa Nicholson back, who is a criminal defense lawyer out of Dane County, because I think you maybe missed the last time she was on here and we were talking about cash bail.
It's really interesting.
Super interesting. She is against this as someone who works in the criminal defense system, because she just, it ends up being not as effective as it sounds like it will be. But then the other one is what we talked about last week, is this amendment on welfare, and anyone who's receiving a childless, able-bodied adult who is also unemployed, should they have to be looking for work in order to receive public assistance? So that was voted. That will also be on there. That is an advisory referendum.
Which means nothing.
Which means that it's just showing popularity. But what didn't get on there is referenda around abortion.
Right.
Because we all know how that would pass in Wisconsin.
Right. And
so that's what I mean as far as they don't have popular opinion on this topic.
But at the same time, they're so gerrymandered, they don't have to care. They don't have to care. They don't have to respond to what their constituents want. They don't. We're going to do this because we know better, Kristen.
Which is all the more reason that you need to be able to vote in the Supreme Court.
Yes.
If you are not registered to vote, myvote.wi.gov. If you have not gone and requested your absentee ballot, you can go do that now. So the general's April 4th, but before that, we need to get through the primary. Which is
critically important.
Yes, which is February 21st. And so just as a rundown, if you're not familiar, there's 4 candidates, which I think is pretty unusual. Next Wednesday, February 1st, we're going to have a class will be in session with Jim Santel.
Oh, good.
Morning Cannolis host.
So smart.
So smart. Former Attorney General. And less about getting into each of the candidates, but more about what you should look for when you are voting for a justice. Because I think there's one thing for us when we're voting for people to represent us, and we look to their values and we look to the policy that they want to advocate for. But it's like so backwards to me on being able to vote for as a layperson who, most of us who don't go to law school, who are not lawyers, who don't interact with the legal system in a criminal way, in a civil way, in so many things. It's like, what as a layperson should we be looking for when we vote? And we're going to talk through that. We're also probably going to talk about the pros and cons, not that we can change anything, of justices getting appointed versus elected. But one of the things that is on the ballot for this, because these are cases that are going to rise up to the Wisconsin Supreme Court, is the challenge to the 1849 abortion ban. And whoever wins this election could be the deciding vote on that lawsuit. And simultaneously, could also be the person who decides whether or not we get new redistricting maps before 2032. And so if you care about those issues, if you care about these issues, you probably already care about these issues if you're listening to this show, let's be honest.
That's true.
So the more important thing is for you to evangelize all of this to your friends who maybe don't care, because as a reminder, and I'm going to repeat this and repeat this and repeat this, in the last 22 years, our worst turnout in the fall in Wisconsin was 44% voter turnout. Our best voter turnout for a spring election was 34%.
That's pathetic.
So we need to vote in April. And I need you, if you're listening to this right now, to care about voting in April. And as the month, especially once we get past the primary, because there's a lot of races that there is no primary, we'll talk more about different school board races and the Senate District 8, obviously with, we'll see which Republican makes it out of that primary.
Right.
But if you care about this,
and you should,
and you fall into the majority of people who feel like it should be legal to have access to abortion care, you need to be voting in April, also in February, but both. Vote in both. All right. When we come back, K-Cups. Really surprising. Did not expect this. This is As Goes Wisconsin.
You are listening to your local Civic Media radio station on air. Thank you. Did you know we are always streaming on TuneIn and the Civic Media app too? And if you miss a show or game, find it wherever you get your podcasts or on our website, civicmedia.us.
The Devil's Advocates.
The conservative dating app, The Right Stuff, is failing 3 months after launch. In October, the app, The Right Stuff, had just 11,000 downloads.
The profile creation process also asks users to list their thoughts about the January 6th Capitol riots. Two reviewers claimed that FBI and police officers visited their homes after filling out their profiles.
The political party that is the Devil's Advocates radio show, live weekdays from 4 to 6 p.m.
Hey, this is Jim Santel. I am the host of Morning Cannolis. Every single Saturday morning from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., we talk about the major stories in law, in government, and the aspiration for justice in America. Delighted to have you join, call in, and be a part of our discussion right here on the networks of Civic Media.
My Shiro always goes the extra mile, stretches every dollar, puts others first. But now it's your time, Mom. Get free tips to help boost your retirement savings now at aceyourretirement.org.
Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Here's your updated forecast on the Shaw. A mix of clouds and sun this afternoon with daytime highs approaching 31. Winds out of the southwest 10 to 20 miles an hour. A few flurries possible at times. Tonight, lows dip down to about 24. Cloudy skies expected. Mainly cloudy skies expected. Tomorrow, daytime highs approaching 32. 1 to 3 inches of snow Wednesday through Wednesday night. For Civic Media, I'm meteorologist Eric Height. Currently, it's 23 degrees.
A progressive voice from Manitowoc to Janesville. WAUK 540 AM. Always streaming at WAUKradio.com.
I love coffee, I love tea. I love the Java Jive and it loves me. Coffee and tea and the Java and me. A cup, a cup, a cup, a cup, a cup.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin on the Civic Media Network. A reminder that we love hearing from you. So if you have a topic you think we should cover or an idea for a guest we should have on, you should email us at asgoeswisconsin@civicmedia.us. And Jane, do you know what this week is?
No.
It's the $1 million ad giveaway.
Oh, of course it is.
How could you forget?
Of course I know that.
If you have not heard, this Thursday, January 26th, 9 a.m., we want to give you free advertising. So if you own a business that's in Wisconsin, if you have a friend who owns a business in Wisconsin, refer them to this. But no strings attached. We literally are giving away grants for free advertising to advertise on our airwaves. And that's across, as you hear me at the beginning of each show, Wausau, Wisconsin Rapids, Green Bay, Oshkosh, Amory, Richland Center, Waukesha, Madison, more that are coming. I think now we have St. Croix County with the oldies station.
Cool.
And so that's Less Talk Radio, but we have country stations, we have talk radio stations, we have oldies stations. And so if you have a product or a service that your target customer lives in Wisconsin or any of those regions, you should be taking part in this. And so basically at 9 a.m. on Thursday, you will go to civicmedia.us/million. There will be an application to fill out. I don't think it's very long.
No, I don't think so either.
And then from there, a salesperson from Civic Media will follow up with you and work with you on creating your campaign. But the most important part, when you fill out the application, there's going to be a thing at the bottom. There's going to be a question at the bottom that says, who sent you? And you need to say, Kristen and Jane from As Goes Wisconsin. That's the most important part.
This is completely self-serving.
Yes, totally. This is totally just for us to say, see how much business, how many people that we sent
reach?
to you.
Yes.
So yeah, but I honestly, we'll be talking about it until Thursday. I'm so excited to see the range of businesses that come in. And yeah, I think this is just so cool. I mean, in 40 years of radio, Jane, have you ever had anything like this?
No, never.
No.
And it really is about finding out what you as the business owner want. What is, do you need more foot traffic? Do you need more, what is it that you want? What are your goals? And our team is going to work with you to hone in on that and help you craft your message. It's really a wonderful opportunity.
Absolutely. So this will not be the last time we talk about it today.
You're going to hear
until
about it
Thursday.
again.
You're going to keep hearing about it. So this was shocking to me. This broke last week and we didn't talk about it, but it's so surprising to me. And I don't even know how they would have measured this. But yes, your K-Cups, K as in Keurig, can save the world. Maybe not save the world, but
that might be overselling a little.
But they're supposedly, apparently, not doing as much damage as I think we all thought they were with those little plastic cups that you use once and then throw away. But if you're worried about the impact of your morning brew, Canadian scientists have found that you should opt for coffee pods over the traditional filter brewing methods.
Coffee pods over coffee pots.
Mm-hmm. Pods over pots.
Pods over pots.
Pods greater than symbol pots. For the math nerds out there. So, they've been criticized for a long time as producing unnecessary waste, but it turns out that they actually, comparatively to a pot of coffee, produce less greenhouse gas emissions because they use less water, less ground coffee, and less electricity.
That just seems really counterintuitive.
It seems so counterintuitive because I feel like when you make a pot of coffee, especially if the pot is finished in a community, like a communal office setting, where the biggest problem is who didn't make a new pot once it's gone, is, I don't know, my brain would think that is less wasteful than each of those same people in an office setting. Like I do think probably at home. So if you're someone who just wants 1 to 2 cups of coffee at your house,
sure,
that makes a little bit more sense to me. But instead of what I do is I've actually gotten better. But before, especially when I worked from home before the show, I would make a pot. I would drink an entire pot by myself and be fine and just be steady hand. So I'm pretty immune to caffeine. I'm drinking less now as I'm trying to drink more water. But apparently, especially if you could, because now they make ones that are compostable.
Well,
with
that's
like the
good.
netting kind of bottom versus the plastic bottom. But either way, I still don't think they taste very good.
Well, and I would how can one save more water than the other? Isn't the amount of water the same amount of water? That doesn't make any sense to me.
I'm also interested because, there's like the Nespresso, those are actually pretty good. Have you ever had an espresso?
Mm-mm.
So they're much more European, and that they're better at making like an espresso shot or double shot, or and sometimes I think if you get the really fancy machine, it can also add milk to it, but it doesn't make you the very American big cup of coffee.
Right.
It's funny to me how American that is.
And most enormous cup of coffee.
Yeah, and like reheating it instead of what I have found in many other cultures where you have an espresso and you drink it pretty quickly versus walking around all day with your cup of coffee and then reheating it after it gets cold. But I miss that. Like I like a cup of coffee with like a dash of cream. But yeah, I wonder how this changes, because I don't think all pods are made equal.
I wouldn't think so. And call me skeptical, but why do I feel like the Keurig people are the one who hired these Canadian researchers to find out and come up with these results?
Don't you think that would have to be disclosed somewhere?
Really?
Oh, you're so cynical.
I'm just cautious.
All right. Well, we're going to link the study to today's notes, along with all the other topics that we covered. If you are listening to the podcast right now, we're going to do a little something different with how we post the podcast. We're going to post it as each hour. So it'll be 3 44-minute episodes per day versus a 2 hour and 15 episode.
A little easier to
digest, a little easier to navigate if there's specific topics that you wanted to, or guests you wanted to hear. So if you are listening to the podcast and you're like, where's the rest of the show? Just go back to the homepage of where you found us and just click hour 2 and we'll be there.
It'll be there.
All right. Top of the hour news is next. And then after that, Bob Keefe from E2 is going to talk about clean jobs in Wisconsin. This is As Goes Wisconsin.
Cup of dats and bazoo. Slip me a slug from that wonderful mug, and I'll cut a rug that's snug in a jug. Drop your nickel in my pot, Joe. Take it slow, waiter, waiter, percolator. I love coffee, I love tea. I love the jive loves me. Coffee and tea and the jive and me. Yeah, a cup.
It's easy to listen to your favorite local radio station anytime. Download the Civic Media app from the Apple or Google Play Store, then listen live or whenever you want from anywhere for free.
Hey, this is Jim Santel. I am the host of Morning Cannolis. Every single Saturday morning from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., we talk about the major stories in law, in government, and the aspiration for justice in America. Delighted to have you join, call in, and be a part of our discussion right here on the networks of Civic Media.
If you can plan barbecues and weddings, you can plan to protect yourself from a natural disaster. Sign up for local alerts, prepare an emergency kit, and make a family communications plan. Get started at ready.gov/plan.
You are listening to WAUK 540 AM Jackson, W266 DR Waukesha, always streaming on the Civic Media app.
This is CBS News on the Hour, sponsored by Liberty Mutual Insurance.
I'm Steve Kathan. A community mourns after the mass shooting in Monterey Park, California.
For the shooting to occur just tore a hole through our hearts.
Judy Chu represents the area in Congress. Authorities are putting the pieces together.
After killing 10 people at the dance studio, the 72-year-old gunman went to a second studio, armed, apparently to kill more. But he was stopped by a 26-year-old Brandon Shea, who took the gun away. He told ABC's Good Morning America the two fought for the gun.
I lunged at him with both my hands, grabbed the weapon, and we had a struggle.
And CBS News has now learned the ages of the 10 people killed. One was in her 50s, 6 were in their 60s, and 3 were in their 70s. Steve Futterman, CBS News, Monterey Park, California.
There's a shooting investigation in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. It's where 12 people were injured in a nightclub shooting early yesterday. No arrests have been made. Police Chief Paul Murphy calls the attack targeted.
Someone who knows something, do the right thing. You can save the next incident, because it's obviously that this person has total disregard for life.
Elon Musk took the stand this morning at a California trial to defend his tweet, claiming he had financing to take Tesla private in a deal that never materialized. This week, the FDA will make some decisions that should pave the way for an updated COVID vaccine later on in the year. Infectious disease expert Dr. William Schaffner.
It would be good if we could have an annual booster. We would hope that the booster would cover people who are at greatest risk for a substantial part of the year.
CBS's Vicki Barker tells us a woman at the center of a sex abuse scandal speaks from behind bars.
I don't believe it's surreal for a second.
Speaking from prison via video conference, Ghislaine Maxwell.
Good morning.
Well, good morning. How are you guys doing?
Good. How are you doing?
Great. I've been enjoying the show this morning.
Oh, good. I'm so glad.
I tuned in a little late, but were you talking about the Keurig controvery? Is that what I heard?
Actually, if you have thoughts on that, because Jane's convinced that Keurig maybe sponsored the study, because she's not convinced that they're actually good for better than a pot of coffee.
I don't get it. Seems like, single use of anything is not necessarily a good thing, but when you're making in my case, 6 or 8 cups of coffee a day and throwing those things in the garbage, come on.
That's what I said. I was like, this is hard for me to wrap. Like, if you have the ones that can be composted, maybe.
Right.
But the plastic ones, it's very hard for me to believe that that's true. But anyways, welcome to the show. We're very excited to have you. So when we come back, we'll have 12. We'll be about 12:06, and I'll introduce you, and we'll talk more about a little bit, give a primer on what E2 does, and how it relates into Wisconsin and Wisconsin jobs, and then I kind of have the questions that were originally sent over, and but it's very conversational.
Well, I totally must confess that I don't know what the questions were that were sent over, so this is kind of new for me. But
all right,
I'd love to talk a little bit about the economic costs of climate change to a place like Wisconsin, and the economic benefits, which are jobs, and I think you got our latest Clean Jobs Midwest report.
Exactly, and because we actually on Friday talked about how much climate change is costing the U.S. in total, as far as like $165 billion in 2022. So all of it. But yeah, and so we'll break at 12:18. And if it feels like there's still more juice there, we'll bring you back after the break. Otherwise, we'll let you go. And then I'll link everything that we talked about to our show notes today and send over the link afterwards.
Sounds fantastic. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, no, this will be fun.
101 FM, WAUK 540 AM.
It's a new year, and because we're excited about our new and still growing Civic Media network of radio stations, it's time to do something really big. How does $1 million advertising giveaway sound to you? Our celebration is your chance to work with Civic Media's amazing sales team, creating a radio advertising campaign promoting your business for free. Save the date. The $1 million advertising giveaway is only happening on Thursday, January 26th. Full details on our website, civicmedia.us/million.
Are you dreading going into work every day? Do you want a career where you can earn more and feel appreciated? If you answered yes, then Sigma Castings, a division of Sigma Engineered Solutions in Marquezan and Jackson, is your answer. They are more than a company. They are a family of dedicated experts that span the continents. Here are a few ways they make you feel appreciated. Entry-level pay is $18 an hour with regular performance reviews. After 90 days, you get 80 hours of vacation plus 11 paid holidays. They will give you a $2,000 sign-on, stay-on bonus. They offer a robust benefit package with low premiums and great coverage, and their 401k will blow you away. Now hiring first shift, Monday through Friday, 5 a.m. till 2 p.m. Start your new career today at Sigma Castings in Marquezan and Jackson. Find them on Indeed or call 920-260-8560 and wake up happy to go to work.
The Shaw 101 FM, WAUK 540 AM, Wisconsin's home for rational talk radio.
As Goes Wisconsin with Kristen Bry is an independent product and has a joint sales agreement with Civic Media. Enjoy.
Friendly competition inside the Civic Media network of our hosts. As we know, I'm a very competitive person. You know how competitive I am? Prick me to start giving blood. They tell me that there's been a contest to see who can fill up their bag the fastest. 5 minutes, 4 seconds. I got done and I said, did I win? And they said, you were the fastest all day.
Moving Wisconsin forward, one joke at a time. This is Kristen Bry with As Goes Wisconsin.
Yada, yada, yada.
Hello, Wisconsin. Welcome to As Goes Wisconsin. I am Kristen Bry. She is Jane Madnair. Thank you for joining us today during your lunch hour, the noon hour. At 12:30, we are going to be joined by Phil Rocco, Marquette Associate Professor of Political Science, who back in the election cycle, wrote a piece on what a flat tax could look like in Wisconsin and why there's very few people that would benefit from that. But he's going to talk to us today about the plan that has actually been proposed by the Wisconsin legislature and what that could actually look like. So stick around for that conversation. But coming up first, we are joined by Bob Keefe, who is the executive director of E2 Environmental Entrepreneurs, which is a national nonpartisan group of business owners, investors, and professionals who leverage economic research and their business perspective to advance policies that are good for the environment and good for the economy. And at the break, we were talking about K-Cups, and you said someone texted in about the K-Cups because we're all skeptical now.
Yeah, and so there was a study done by Canadian researchers who found that using the individual K-Cups is actually better for the environment than making the whole pot of coffee.
Yes.
So Texter from the 414 says, if I understand how this was determined, a K-Cup is a definite amount in a specific usage, whereas making a pot is using a whole bunch of coffee, whether it all gets consumed or not. The savings to the earth come from using less coffee beans, less farming, etc. This is how I understand it. So thank you from the 414.
Bob, what do you think? Do you buy that?
You know, I have a hard time buying that. I mean, yes, we are taxing our environment with coffee farms and with water and all of that. But gosh, just throwing those little cups in the garbage or even recycling them and knowing that they're probably not being recycled just seems like a bad deal. I don't buy it.
I agree.
I'm sticking with the Mr. Coffee myself. I'm sticking with the coffee pot.
There you go. All right. Well, Bob Keefe, thank you so much for joining the show today. And so tell us more because we're going to talk more about clean jobs in Wisconsin and the economic impact that being how you can both be good for the economy and for the environment. But tell us more just about environmental entrepreneurs.
Absolutely. And listen, I'm so excited to be with you guys. What a cool idea for a show, taking things like flat taxes and climate change and making them fun and interesting. I was hoping you were going to start with a couple of climate jokes or something, Kristen. No, you got any good climate jokes?
Do I have any good climate jokes?
I've been thinking all weekend about this. I'm waiting for the opening. I've been thinking of all weekend about something to use on your show that would be befitting of such a wise and cool and interesting show in such an interesting state. Just for the record. Can I try it?
Did you come up with anything?
Can I try it?
Sure, go ahead.
So we all know about, and what's a better joke than a fart joke, right? We all know about cows. We all know about methane and how that's adding to global warming, right? So why did the Wisconsin dairy farmer worry so much about global warming?
Why?
Because his cows kept cutting the cheese. Come on, huh?
All right. Did you come up with that?
I did.
Nice.
As far as you know. As far as
Golf
you know.
clap. Golf
It was
clap,
either
Bob.
me or one of my daughters.
That was pretty clever. Cutting the cheese. Smell
Yeah.
our derriere.
That's. But all joking aside, climate change is a serious issue, right?
Yeah.
And what you asked me about my organization, E2 Environmental Entrepreneurs. We're a national network of more than 10,000 people, 10,000 business owners, investors, and others who care about the economy and care about the environment. And we do a lot of work around making the economic case and telling the economic story about how the economy and the environment are not at odds, but we can't have one without the other. And what we're seeing now in this country, in this world, in your state, is that the economic costs of climate change are adding up. Climate change is battering our economy, from farmers to the outdoor industry, to business people, to everyday homeowners. Good news is we can do something about it. We're finally doing something about it, and we're creating a lot of jobs, driving economic growth by doing so, and reducing those costs that we're all feeling.
So, because I think to a certain extent, we understand when you talk about clean energy jobs, it's jobs that work in windmills or solar power or something. So like what kind of like how broad or what are we actually talking about when we talk about clean energy jobs?
Right. Well, naturally, you're going to think about the wind turbine worker or the
Totally.
guy or woman installing solar panels on your roof, right? But the clean energy space is a lot bigger than that. And my organization, E2, has been tracking clean energy jobs around the country for more than a decade now. And what we now know, Kristen, is that there are more than 3 million people, about 3.2 million people that work in clean energy in every single state in the country. And then in Wisconsin alone, we're talking about 71,000 Wisconsinites, according to our latest Clean Jobs America report and a companion report that we do called Clean Jobs Midwest that breaks all this stuff down for every state and every sector. So when you look at those 71,000 jobs in Wisconsin, about 6,500 of them are in renewable energy. Yes, the solar and the wind folks like you're talking about. Another 6,000 work in clean vehicles, supply chains for the car companies that are making electric vehicles, or we track any job that is related to a car that has a plug in it. So hybrid plug-in vehicles, for instance, those sort of things. But the biggest part of the clean energy space is something we don't really think about too much, which is energy efficiency. About 58,000 people work in energy efficiency related jobs in Wisconsin. What does that look like? Those are construction workers putting insulation in our roofs or changing out our windows in our houses, in our offices, in our homes. It's electricians working on LED lighting systems in our big office buildings in our cities and in our towns that are saving consumers and businesses money with every monthly electric bill. A lot of it is around the HVAC work, heating, air conditioning, ventilation work. Companies that are swapping out dirty old gas or other furnaces with electric and more energy efficiency models, things like that. And by the way, it's also all of the people that are working in factories, I think, including some in Wisconsin, that are making Energy Star appliances, whether it's better dishwashers and refrigerators that are going in our homes, or huge energy efficient heating and air conditioning systems that are going into office buildings around the country. So the good news is these jobs are spread across a lot of occupations. They typically pay a little bit better than jobs that similar jobs in non-clean energy businesses. And with some of the policies that we recently passed in Washington and elsewhere, there's going to be a lot more of them.
So it sounds like, I mean, at least as you just described it, it's a pretty broad definition of what can fall under, because I would not have thought that just working on the appliances that are high efficiency appliances is then categorized under clean energy jobs. And so did you know that, Jane? And so that's really encouraging, because I think you're right. I think my mind goes to people working on installing solar panels, or people working on the wind and EV. Yes, for sure. But even the manufacturing of products that are just energy efficient is really interesting, because I wouldn't have thought that, especially in a manufacturing state like Wisconsin historically. I think more people should know that that also falls under what the clean energy sector can do for jobs.
Absolutely. And just for the record, our data is based on data and the way that the Department of Energy tracks it, the U.S. Department of Energy. So that's how they track energy jobs, period. So they also track jobs in oil and gas and jobs in coal, jobs in nuclear, et cetera. And this is how the Department of Energy tracks clean energy jobs now. And if you look across it, all those sectors in energy, there are about 2.5 times as many people that work in clean energy now than work in fossil fuel energy, believe it or not.
Wow.
And that matters in a place like Wisconsin, which, by the way, doesn't have a lot of coal or gas the last time I was there, but it does have some cold winters. And it does have some energy efficiency people, right?
I feel like that twang makes me think that you're from the South, and so you're not less likely to have experienced as many cold winters as we have.
I've done my best to avoid winters my entire life. So yes.
We're talking to Bob Keefe, who's the executive director of E2 Environmental Entrepreneurs. Jane, do you have a question?
I do, Bob. I just want to say you give me hope that more businesses are embracing this, because it's always seemed completely counterproductive to me that you're going to destroy the environment and you're going to kill off your customers. This does not seem like a good business model.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And look, the other thing is, from a business perspective, this is a bottom line issue as well, right? Some of the biggest drivers of clean energy growth in this country have been really big technology companies. And why is that? Because they use really big data centers to make things like this internet chat happen and to make our email happen and everything we do online. Those data centers use a ton of electricity, and they want the cheapest electricity there is. And right now, the cheapest electricity there is, hands down, in just about every single part of the country, just about every single part of the world, is solar and wind. So a lot of the solar and the wind growth that we've seen over the years has been because businesses and major employers and major users of electricity are looking for a cheaper route. The good news is we're here.
Absolutely. So when we come back, because I want to bring you through the break, because I want to talk more specifically about Wisconsin and what creates because it sounds like we're top 20 for how many clean energy jobs we have here.
Yeah.
Which is great. Right. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And so talking about maybe how we got to where we are right now, what can encourage more job growth politically, how this is faring. So when we come back from this break, Bob Keefe, executive director of E2 Environmental Entrepreneurs, will still be here. Maybe he'll even have another funny joke for us about cows cutting the cheese in the derriere of Wisconsin. All right, this is As Goes Wisconsin.
I feel like all the women we have on our show, like our
way to bring a joke. I think you're the first. I think you're one of our first guests to bring us a joke, which was very good.
Is that true? Well, look, I looked at your homepage, and it's one joke at a time, right?
One joke at a time. That is very true. All right. So when we come back, we'll talk more about how Wisconsin, I think, is number 17 in clean energy jobs, and what industry has kind of been leading the way here, or even specifically which companies. What encourages more of that, and then what our political landscape is either helping or hurting when it comes to that.
I think I can hit a lot of that.
All right. Anything else you want to make sure? Because when we come back, we'll only have 8 minutes, so we'll go by pretty quickly.
Yeah, I wouldn't go excessively deep into the specifics on those jobs. I mean, what I can say is that probably the fastest growing sector or the most promising sector, not just in Wisconsin, but nationally, is around clean vehicles. Every single car maker in the EVs. And in Wisconsin, there was a 26% increase in clean vehicle jobs last year alone. So that's going to.
What if I asked more? Because I'm also curious about this as far as on the applicant employee side, what training or what skills are needed that people who want good jobs should be looking into getting to take part in this part of the economy?
Right.
Is that
I think I can hit on that. Be an electrician is my answer, basically.
Oh, nice. All right.
We don't have enough electricians in this country for all of this.
I certainly can't fix my own electricity.
And then would you like to talk at all about the cost of climate change? I mean,
sure.
Did you guys hit on the numbers recently?
We did on Friday, but you can't say it enough. So,
Civic Media, I'm meteorologist Derek Height. Currently, it's 25 degrees.
A progressive voice for rural Wisconsin. WAUK 540 AM. Always streaming at WAUKradio.com.
welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. I am Kristen Bry. We got Jane Matnair on the board, and we are talking to Bob Keefe, who is the executive director of E2 Environmental Entrepreneurs. And I was kind of surprised, I was going to say, when I found out that Wisconsin ranks number 17 out of all 50 states in clean energy jobs. And so what, as far as, I know you were talking about the Midwest Jobs Report, but what is it in Wisconsin? Is it what you were saying before as far as those high efficiency appliances?
Well, there has been a lot of growth in energy efficiency in Wisconsin, and that's jobs at manufacturing plants making Energy Star appliances for sure. Another huge area that saw a real jump last year in Wisconsin and nationally, Kristen, and will continue to, is around electric vehicles. Look, every single car maker in the country, every single car maker in the world is shifting to electric vehicles right now. And last year alone in Wisconsin, there was a 26% increase in the number of people that are working in electric vehicle related jobs. These are, again, electric vehicles, hybrid plug-ins, et cetera. More than 6,000 people now work in Wisconsin in that area. So it's going to be huge. And when we think of some of the federal policies that have recently passed, the two biggest is the Inflation Reduction Act and the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, the big bipartisan infrastructure act. Those are going to create tremendous tax benefits and investments into clean energy, including into electric vehicles, but also into wind, into solar, into energy efficiency. So that is going to be, we think, is one of the biggest job drivers this country has ever seen. Sounds like hyperbole, but it's not.
It's not.
Hyperbole. It sounds like hyperbole too.
Hyperbole. I just love your accent. So, you know, we talked about a little bit about this on Friday because Wisconsin right now, as you referenced before, we do have very cold winters comparatively, but comparatively internally, our winters are only getting warmer and warmer. In fact, in Milwaukee and Green Bay, more than any other city in the country is seeing the biggest overall average increase in temperature each winter, which is a problem. Like we're seeing the problems in our Great Lakes not having enough ice and what that does to a lot of different things. And so in that conversation, we saw that $165 billion it's cost to clean up the 18 major climate catastrophes that happened in 2022. And so as the core part of E2 being what's both good for the environment and good for the economy, like how does this come down to like your mission statement of convincing people that the both can exist together?
Right. Well, look at those numbers a little bit more, Kristen. I mean, nationally, yes, it was $165 billion worth of damage last year alone. In Wisconsin alone, it was more than $2 billion. And if you look over time, most of that has been from flooding, from some of the things that you were just talking about, when you have a faster snow melt, when you have extreme rainfall, which the state has experienced in spades in recent years. Of the $17 billion in climate-related disasters in Wisconsin since 1980, about half of that, more than half of that, $8 billion has been from flooding alone. That's according to NOAA, some of those numbers that you were talking about. And so what does that look like? What does that mean to our economy? Well, it means that farmers' fields are getting flooded out. And when farmers flood, try to say that 3 times fast. When farmers' fields get flooded out, that obviously impacts one of the biggest sectors of the state's economy, but it also impacts us all at the grocery line, right? It causes the price of food and other goods to go up. Look at what happens when snowpack is not what it used to be. That's a big hit on Wisconsin's outdoor industry, for instance, which is a $9 billion industry. 90,000 people work in outdoor related jobs in your state. That's skiing and fishing and everything else that's getting battered by climate change.
And so how long have you been working? Because you also wrote a book. You're the author of say it for me.
Not the first one, Climatenomics.
Climatenomics. Thank you. Washington, Wall Street, and the economic battle to save our planet. And so how, since you've started working in this industry, I guess, of evangelizing that these two can coexist, how much have you seen attitudes change, specifically on Wall Street and of business owners?
Well, it's getting to be an easier story to tell and an easier story to understand. Look, I mean, yes, climate change has been happening since the beginning of history, but the past 8 years have been the 8 warmest years on record globally. In the past decade, we've had 7 of the most expensive years for climate disasters. So this is hitting people in the pocketbook, right? I mean, look at homeowners insurance. Homeowners insurance is up 50% over the past decade. Anybody who owns a home is paying more because those insurance companies are getting hammered by hurricanes in the east and fires in the west, et cetera. So to me, the discussion is changing. People are starting to understand that this is a pocketbook issue. And when something becomes a pocketbook issue, it becomes more relevant to people and they care more about it. And what I like to say, Kristen, during the break, we were talking a little bit about the politics of all of this. What I like to say is, look, I don't care if you believe in science. I don't care if you like polar bears. I don't care if you drive a Prius or a pickup truck. The fact of the matter is climate change is hitting you in the pocketbook. And we've got to do something about it. And again, the good news is, thanks to some of these policies that we passed at the federal level, some of the stuff that we hope the state is moving forward in Wisconsin, we'll be able to not only reduce some of these costs of climate change, but drive jobs and economic growth while doing it.
Absolutely. Well, for any of our listeners who want more information, where can they get more information either about you, your book, or E2?
Well, thank you for that. Absolutely. Go to e2.org to find out more about E2, and you can look up some of this data on the state and both jobs and costs, and also nationally. If you want to know about the book, go to climatenomicsbook.com, climatenomicsbook.com.
Awesome. Well, Bob Keefe, thank you so much for spending time with us today. Thank you for the joke. And we'll have to have you back when the next jobs report comes out.
I'd like that. Thank you, Kristen.
All right. Have a great day. Coming up next, Phil Rocco from Marquette University will be here to talk about the implications of a flat tax. Stay with us. This is As Goes Wisconsin.
The Shaw 101 FM, Franklin's choice for news talk radio. Streaming 24/7 at WAUKradio.com.
CBS News Brief. Authorities hunt for a motive in the California mass shooting that left 10 dead. CBS's Steve Futterman.
Right now, I'm standing in front of the entrance to the Star Dance Club. The gates are locked, but now in front of these locked gates, people have started to bring flowers and candles.
Reporter Miranda Thomas covering the nightclub shooting in Baton Rouge, Louisiana that left a dozen people hurt.
We believe this was a targeted event.
Baton Rouge Police Chief Murphy Paul says when the officers rushed inside inside the building, they were unable to pick out the shooter from the large crowd.
Reporter Katie Kamen covering the South Carolina murder trial of Alex Murdaugh, charged with...
Hello, sir. Sorry for the timing confusion.
No problem.
I don't know.
No problem at all.
Lots of balance. You doing good? Are you still on sabbatical?
No.
Oh, I just got
I'm
that.
back in the thick of it. So.
You're back in the thick of it. I got
All
that
good.
email and I was like, what are you doing? But good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too.
So I figure I'll reference the article, but obviously you wrote that originally when it was just an idea that didn't have a lot of detail, and now we have more detail. So we can kind of say this was the reference, but now looking at what LeMahieu has put forward, what can we apply from what you originally wrote as far as what this would look like?
Yep.
And I
Sounds
think
good. Can
ultimately
do.
also just like, is there any devil's advocate of why this could be good for people as far as the argument of people like population and people moving here? But I think I know your answer to that. So
Yeah.
we'll at least
I'll
address
try
that.
to get into some specifics.
Okay, perfect.
2 years. Red swamp, mini orange, and electric blue crayfish are native to the southern U.S., but not Wisconsin, and can damage native plant and animal populations. The company charged with 147 citations. The DNR hoping this case will deter others from breaking Wisconsin's invasive species laws. Starting this summer, UW Green Bay will begin offering a training program for caregiver supervisors. The program will offer free tuition to about 250 people. You're listening to The Shaw, 101 FM, WAUK 540 AM.
What are the governor's priorities for Wisconsin? Tony Evers will lay out his second-term plans during his State of the State address January 24th. You can hear it live on your local civic media radio station. Will abortion rights, Medicaid expansion, and legalizing marijuana be the top issues? Your favorite hosts also provide insight by breaking down the governor's address. The State of the State address live Tuesday, January 24th at 7 p.m. here on your local civic media radio station, streaming on the Civic Media app.
¿Te tiene agobiado tu trabajo? ¿Sueñas con una carrera profesional donde puedas ganar más dinero y te sientas apreciado? Si tu respuesta es afirmativa, entonces Sigma Castings, una división de Sigma Engineered Solutions en Marquez y Jackson, es tu respuesta. Son más que una empresa, son una familia de expertos dedicados que abarcan continentes. Te harán sentir apreciado de muchas maneras. Por ejemplo, el nivel básico de pago es de $18 por hora con revisiones periódicas de rendimiento. Después de los primeros 90 días de empleo, tendrás derecho a 80 horas de vacaciones, más 11 feriados pagados. Aún más, ganarías un bono de $2,000 por permanecer en tu puesto. Te ofrecen un paquete de beneficios robusto, con primas bajas y excelente cobertura, y su plan de retiro 401k te va a impresionar. Se está contratando ahora para el primer turno, lunes a viernes de 5 de la mañana a 2 de la tarde. Empieza tu nueva carrera ya con Sigma Castings en Marquez y Jackson. Encuéntralos en Indeed o llama a 920-260-8560 y levántate en la mañana feliz de ir al trabajo.
We stand on the shoulders of women who came before us.
Women who fought for their own financial futures.
And now it's our turn.
Join us. Visit WeSaySaveIt.org and take control of your financial future by saving for retirement.
A message from AARP and the Ad Council.
Nair is on the board. No matter where you're listening across the Civic Media Network or on the Civic Media app, thank you for tuning in. And a reminder that if you miss any part of the today's show, you can always listen to it as a podcast, which you can find on asgoeswisconsin.com/listen or wherever you find podcasts. And today, I know you're right on this, Jane, but today is the first day that you can start turning in your taxes. They're starting to accept if you want to get your tax refund. I don't know if I'll get a tax refund or not this year,
Really?
but we'll find out. But with that, we thought we maybe would talk a little bit more about what future taxes could potentially look like in the great state of Wisconsin. So Dr. Phil Rocco is an associate professor of political science at Marquette University, and this is his, I think, third time joining us on the show.
Three-peat, is that a hat trick?
Three-peat.
Sure.
I like that. Yeah. So friend of the show, officially, I would say.
All right.
And I invited you on because back in election season, when the flat tax was just an idea that Tim Michels kind of threw out there, and then the conservatives were very upset that people took him at his word. Well, it's not actually a plan. And now we actually do have a plan. But in the hypothetical stages, you wrote a guest article for Recombobulation Area about what a flat tax would do for most of us in Wisconsin. And it was great. It was very detailed. And now we actually have a plan that has been proposed that would take, I think, is it 3.25, a flat tax of 3.25%?
Right.
So
yeah, it would be a flat tax of 3.25%.
Which is pretty low.
Yes.
Which is pretty low.
For comparison, like right now, the tax rates go from 3.45, I think, all the way up to 7.56% for the top bracket. So that's a lot of revenue disappearing overnight. And the thing that was interesting was that when we wrote that piece back in the fall, like there were two different versions of the flat tax that were sort of floating out there. One of them was a flat tax with a slightly higher rate, which meant that, some people's taxes would in fact go up. Lower income folks' taxes would go up, but you wouldn't have, as much revenue disappearing. The other option was this kind of flat tax, which just brings down the top rates to the lowest, or in this case, below the lowest rate. And what it means in practical terms is two things. One is that it can only be described as sort of like a bonanza for people at the top part of the income distribution. So the richest 1.4% of taxpayers under this proposal get 1/3 of the total kind of benefits, right? In monetary terms.
And how many people does that end up being? Is that so it's 1% of our population?
Right. That's, it's a pretty small number. So, I think, just a pretty small number of taxpayers in the state.
And do we know what threshold of how much those people are making?
So the 1.4%, that's people making 500,000 and over.
Okay.
Right. So they're going to see that 1.4% is going to see about a 1/3 of the tax breaks. The 70% of the taxpayers are going to receive only about 17.8% of the total tax cut. So, in practical terms, this is not going to be, there's going to be like a few movies and maybe dinner, per year for most filers. But for the people at the top of the income distribution, it's like a windfall. It's a lot. So that's the first thing, just in terms of like, the rates, are going to seem like they come down, right? But in reality, most of the benefit is concentrated at the very top of the income distribution. The other thing, and we can talk about this more maybe after the break, is that it's not just who the tax cuts are going to. It's also the fact that every year when this is fully implemented, over $5 billion in revenue is just going to disappear. And if you put that in practical terms, it means that you could cut something like, the entire UW system budget and all funding for corrections, and you would still need to cut more in order to account for that. And you can do all kinds of comparisons, like it's more than 4 times all state K-12 spending, more than 4 times like the state and local shared revenue to local governments. Like it's a lot of money. And
it's also basically almost as much as our surplus is right now.
Yeah. So this idea is like the surplus is going to maybe like hide the effects of this for like a year. But then once it's fully implemented, it's a lot of revenue going out the door very, very quickly, in a way that would be very dramatically, would result in some dramatic negative economic effects for the state, which we can talk about. But the idea that LeMahieu and Republicans are kind of pushing here is that like the surplus means that we're overtaxed. But the surplus is really sort of like a one-time perfect storm because of a variety of different trends. It's not like part of a bigger trend. So what that means is that once that surplus is gone, this is going to be just a dramatic reduction in or require a dramatic reduction in state spending. Or alternatively, they could just raise, the sales tax, but they'd have to raise it a lot in order to make up the difference, which is, a regressive tax, a tax that's going to fall mostly on working class, middle class folks. So, there's a lot of different ways to like project the future and like how this could work out. But the bottom line is distributionally for most people, this is going to mean not a lot of savings in terms of taxes and potentially huge cuts to vital services that people have come to rely on.
Phil, just a couple things. First of all, I can't be the only person who just lies awake at night, tossing and turning, worried that the wealthiest 1.4% in Wisconsin are struggling to buy a third vacation home. It's so painful, and I've lost so much sleep. But additionally, a couple of years ago, didn't they try something like this in Kansas?
Yes.
And they essentially broke Kansas?
Yes, this is what was called the Kansas experiment, right? What the governor Sam Brownback at the time described as an adrenaline shot in the heart of the Kansas economy. And it was the largest tax cut that they'd ever seen in Kansas. It brought down the top rate from like 6.4% down to 4.9%. So that the wealthiest people were paying basically the same marginal rate as the middle class. And the idea was that plus a bunch of different other things were going to generate all of this new investment in Kansas. Employers were going to start setting up shop there. You were going to see this huge kind of multiplier effect. In fact, the reverse happened, right? So what that meant was that the state had to slash spending in fairly exorbitant ways, right? Cutting money for highways, cutting money for the state Medicaid program, cutting money for schools, like so that janitors and librarians couldn't get hired. And what that did was it reduced all of the sort of like economic multiplier effect that government spending has. So like when government spends, it means that people have contracts, private contractors who do business with the government get hired. There are all of these sort of attendant knock-on effects of government spending. And as a result, when you simply cut, Kansas cut a great deal, it basically meant that it couldn't fund a lot of these programs, and actually it made it much sort of less attractive to come into the state because the state just wasn't offering a lot of services. So population growth kind of flattened out. And then by any sort of like any economic indicator, job growth, economic development or investment, the state just started tanking. And so by August 2014, S&P downgraded the state's credit rating. Like it was an economic disaster of unmitigated proportions that ultimately like led to Sam Brownback, who was once, I think, seen as a kind of potential presidential contender. It was a disgrace for him, and he's sort of like left public life.
Oh my gosh.
And so it's really hard to overstate just like what a just political and economic disaster was. And guess what? They ended up repealing it because it was such a disaster.
So we're talking to Dr. Phil Rocco, who is an associate professor of political science at Marquette University, about the proposed flat tax in Wisconsin. And has anyone ran that Kansas story by LeMahieu and Voss and been like, hey, how would we make it not, how would we avoid being like Kansas?
Well, there's this like alternative, like this like a speculative fiction universe of like what people say the whole Kansas experiment was really about. Like, so there's a whole like literature, like literature that like comes from conservative think tanks. It's like, no, it actually wasn't, the tax cuts that caused all of these things. And they point to like any number of like a concatenation of other factors, like, well, it must have been something else, right? But when you look at Kansas, and you can just do the comparison to all of its neighboring states, that all of the different things that people suggest were going on in Kansas, they were also going on in those neighboring states. And what happened was like none of those neighboring states faced essentially the economic cliff that Kansas did. And so it's really hard to conclude that it's not this Kansas experiment. But the thing is, it's really inconvenient for them to talk about this. I mean, it's because it's a really great example of just what it means to get rid of. So like the argument that I think is being made is that like a lot of this spending that's going on is like wasteful, right? And that like it's not a big deal to cut over $5 billion a year because there's so much waste. But the reality is like waste or, waste, fraud, and abuse like is a really, really small percentage, right? If you were able to like calculate it, it's like really small percentage of what government actually does. And most of what government does is actually help to stimulate economic growth in the, a variety of regions in the state. And so when you I think people can't actually conceptualize what that scale of cuts means for their everyday life, for the highways, right? You think about like the worst highway you've ever driven on in Wisconsin, and imagine it getting perpetually worse. Like that's what $5 billion a year in outflow of revenue, will make happen. Alternatively, it's like a sale, potentially like that spending cuts plus a prohibitively high sales tax for a lot of people. So the argument I think that is getting made is that like that somehow this is going to induce population growth in the state, and that it's actually like the progressivity of the tax code that's inhibiting that. The thing I would point to is that the projected population growth for Minnesota, more progressive tax code, is 12% out to 2040. Wisconsin's is already only 3% projected population growth out to 2040. There's no way on earth that, what's going on here or what might be going on here is a population surge as a result of a flat tax. There's, it defies the most basic common sense to make that argument.
And we can keep talking about it after the break because we only have about 2 minutes left before we have to go to the commercial. But it's also because I hear this a lot, and you think of like the states that are growing fastest, a lot of them do have sometimes no income tax, Texas, Florida. But they're also, I always say this, they're also a lot warmer than us, but I think that's so interesting to compare it to Minnesota, who's arguably colder than us. And you had to be like a Vikings fan, but and the fact that I didn't know that discrepancy as far as what their population trend has been, despite it being a much more, it's in the last 12, 13 years, like the discrepancy between policies and how much they've been different, with all things being the same as far as weather, climate, culture. And so we'll talk more about that when we get back.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
And there's so many different ways I wanted to go with this, and we'll only have you for 8 minutes, so we'll just have to have you back. But stay with us. Good question. I didn't even know that was a thing. And that is
so wild. You gotta, I like, there are so many articles about it. It's wild.
Will you, if you send, because I'll link it to this, but I almost feel like I should make a video on top of this.
Oh, you should. You absolutely
and be like, so maybe we should do this. How much do you know about the cross section of who this would benefit and who's already benefiting from the manufacturing and agriculture tax credit?
I mean,
do you know anything about that?
What I know is basically what I told you, which is that like 30% of the benefit is going to go to like the top 1.4%.
Yeah, so I won't bring it up because I know there's also this loophole. It's for farmers, but it's mostly for manufacturers, and there's no, like, they get this tax credit that sometimes means they have to pay basically nothing in Wisconsin without proving that they've created a single job.
Yeah, I mean, so this is the thing is like tax enforcement at the state level is ridiculously hard. You should have on a tax administrator.
Oh,
I don't know who, but another good person for you to maybe have on is Isaac Martin, UC San Diego. He studies taxes. It's a big thing.
So fun.
He makes it sexy, I will say.
Okay, all right. That's what we're all about that on this show.
He's like, in the tax policy world, he's like Mick Jagger. Yeah, he's strutting around.
All right, so I think when we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about like what actually for the state. How can the states that have low to no income tax get away with it? Like what else has to shift for some of the states to be able to do it versus some states not be able to do it? Or we'll wrap up, and then I want the political actual.
The big thing that I want to talk about in that section is like the Sun Belt thing is still happening.
Okay, we'll bring that up.
Wednesday through Wednesday night. For Civic Media, I'm meteorologist Eric Height. Currently, it's 25 degrees.
The Shaw 101 FM, your fix for progressive talk. From Muskego to Milwaukee, always streaming at WAUKradio.com.
I'm gonna tell the man at the IRS, this old boy, hell, I've had enough.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin with Kristen Bry. We are talking to Dr. Phil Rocco, who is an associate professor of political science at Marquette University, about the potential implications of a Wisconsin flat tax, which the current proposal sits at 3.25%, and what that could mean for Wisconsin. And this isn't even before the flat tax. Since I've moved home or moved back, there's been conversations around no income tax and what that could do. And there are some states, what is there, like 9 in total that have no income tax? But I think of, Tennessee, Florida, Texas, I think Alaska, maybe Wyoming, but some of the states that can generate enough revenue otherwise to function without having an income tax. So what it kind of has to be in place, as far as you understand it, for a low to no income tax to work in a state?
Yeah, so like some states have deposits of natural resources that they can have franchise taxes on, right? I think about Alaska, out west. There are states that just have a naturally occurring resource that you can sort of tax and generate revenue off of that, okay? Other states have booming industries that bring in people who don't live in the state as tourists frequently. And you can use sales taxes much more effectively there because, you have such a kind of booming tourist industry in dollar terms, right? So what ultimately you have to do if you don't want to have an income tax is like one option is you have to have some other sort of resource there. There's like a special tax that you can just leverage. The other thing you could do is create a really regressive tax code, right? Where you're relying on taxes that mainly fall on people who are poor, or working class, middle class folks. Rely more heavily on property tax, which is something that states, used to do. Wisconsin was one of the big pioneers in the early 20th century, in 1911, in really moving the state to a progressive income tax, because property is so hard to effectively and efficiently tax without, a measure of corruption kind of getting involved there. So that was the big complaint about in the 19th century. It's really easy to hide property value and property wealth, especially back then. The other thing that you can do is just like slash services and just like, make government a lot less effective at doing the things we expected to do. And that's something that you definitely see in states that don't have kind of effective income tax regimes. But I think the thing that ultimately, is sort of happening in Wisconsin is, essentially every time the state cuts taxes, and by the way, we are already at the lowest level of tax collection, lowest rated tax collection on record, right? That's how much taxes have come down since the 1990s. Like we have really sucked out a lot of revenue in the state. And what that means, it's not like the demand goes away. It just means that either we're saying, that we're not going to meet that demand, or we're pushing off the responsibility onto other levels of government, like local governments, or which is why you see so many bond measures and millage increases in school districts now, right? Because there's still demand. We still have to pay for things.
Yeah.
Unless you just want, the basic services that we expect as a society just fall apart. And it's also, I think, why governments are in such a local governments are in such a difficult position right now, an increasingly impossible one. And so like that's the sort of bigger picture here. It's like, you know, it's easy to say or easy to sort of have this concept like we're gonna, you know, decrease taxes, step 2 question mark, step 3 profit, right? The South Park underwear gnomes. But I think the bigger thing is that like the population trends in Wisconsin are really emblematic of population trends across the country. Like people are moving from colder to warmer climates. That is not about taxes.
Yep.
But then you look at Minnesota and it's like, why are people moving to that cold state, which in many cases is like colder than here even.
Yeah.
And less so to Wisconsin. And I think one of the really important answers is that you have economic policies that have led to the growth of a thriving, you know, metropolitan region in the Twin Cities, whereas Wisconsin is really disinvested from the economic power, you know, potential economic powerhouses of the state. And I think about the UW system as like one big place that when you cut the UW system, you are cutting an engine of economic growth for the state. That's what you're doing. You can say that you are, you know, sticking it to, you know, quote unquote, like liberal professors and elites and so forth. But what you're doing is you're screwing over the economy of the state.
Yeah. So, I mean, this all obviously comes down to what will be months from now, the final budget. But it feels like this would be a non-starter as far as something that Governor Evers would sign. But do you think that there's any room for any kind of flat tax, even if it was a little bit higher, or do you think this is dead in the water?
No, I think this is it would be hard to say that this is not, you know, dead in the water. The question is, you know, how much, how much do Republicans want to like press the issue and extend budget negotiations and go to the mats over this, right? How long do they want the budget fight effectively to be? And I think, you know, one thing that is going to be interesting is how the narrative about the flat tax kind of spins out there. I think the thing that Republicans, the sort of advantage this sort of accrues to them in debates like this is that like not much information gets out there about what the flat tax is, because people are like, oh, it's a flat tax, it's simpler, it's, you know, easier. But the way of describing it is, this is not a tax cut. This is a change in the way that we're using the power of government to distribute costs and benefits in society. And what this is going to do is redistribute benefits to the top income bracket in the state. And what it's going to mean for the rest of us is, you know, how are we going to fund highway construction? How are we going to fund schools? How are we going to do all the things that we need to do? And, you know, maybe you get like 200 additional bucks, you know, if you're at the right part of the income distribution, and like,
because you're probably going to be spending on a sales tax anyways.
Yeah, exactly.
It'll just go immediately to the increase in sales property taxes.
Property taxes, which continue to go up.
Yeah.
Right? Somebody pays somewhere.
Exactly. All right. Well, Dr. Phil Rocco, thank you so much for joining us and breaking this down for us. I told at the break, I said, that Kansas story is really something. And so making a little bit more noise about that, I think would be good. But we will have you back soon. Thank you so much for your time, sir. And have a great day.
As ever. Take care.
All right. We are going to go to the top of the hour news. And when we come back, thanks again. This is As Goes Wisconsin.
Rub on a lot of folks, sucker, I ain't one. From now on, I'm keeping my pace. Ain't gonna deduct none. So put your 1044 where the sun don't shine. Straighten out your own damn mess. You can write me off, 'cause I ain't giving a dime to the IRS.
What are the governor's priorities for Wisconsin? Tony Evers will lay out his second-term plans during his State of the State address January 24th. You can hear it live on your local Civic Media radio station. Will abortion rights, Medicaid expansion, and legalizing marijuana be the top issues? Your favorite hosts also provide insight by breaking down the governor's address. The State of the State address live Tuesday, January 24th at 7 p.m. here on your local Civic Media radio station, streaming on the Civic Media app.
Max Inc. Radio, we are local music with Pete from the Skin Tones.
Here, you have been warned. Not only Madison, the rest of Wisconsin and the U.S. Skin Tones, we're coming at you. We're going to be committing rock atrocities. We're fit, we're in shape, we are tight, we are muscular, we are attractive for our ages, and we are sexy as hell.
Listen to Max Inc. Radio Saturday nights, 6 p.m. to midnight on the Civic Media Radio Network.
You are listening to WAUK 540 AM Jackson, W266 DR Waukesha, always streaming on the Civic Media app.
This is CBS News on the Hour, sponsored by Liberty Mutual Insurance.
I'm Steve Kathan. Investigators search for answers in the mass shooting in Monterey Park, California that left 10 people dead. CBS's Nichelle Medina.
As investigators work to determine what motivated a gunman to open fire in a dance hall, residents struggled.
I feel this sense of great loss about the home that I always had. It's just gone. I'll never be able to feel safe here again.
Suddenly heard the boom, 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 boom. Hattie Pong was at the Star Ballroom Dance Studio Saturday night as shots rang out. 72-year-old Hu Can Tran was eventually tracked down in Torrance, where police say he took his own life as a SWAT team moved in.
And in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, WAFB TV reporter Miranda Thomas says police believe a gunman targeted people in a nightclub where 12 were injured.
How did someone get a gun inside this establishment?
Police are working with officials from the Alcoholic Beverage and Control Board to find out that answer. We're told police are reviewing surveillance footage from inside the club to try and catch their suspect.
Jury selection today in a murder case that's made headlines around the country.
Alex Murdaugh is accused of killing his 52-year-old wife and 22-year-old son at the family's home in rural South Carolina in June of 2021. The 54-year-old prominent lawyer's life has unraveled over the past 2 years. He faces about 100 other criminal charges. Prosecutors say he stole millions of dollars from clients, committed insurance fraud trying to stage his own death, and ran a drug and money laundering ring. Jim Crisula, CBS News.
In San Francisco, Elon Musk told a jury today he was sure he had backing from Saudi investors when he tried to take Tesla private in 2018. It never happened. Shareholders sued over losses. European leaders are pushing Germany to allow countries to send new versions of Germany's new tanks to help Ukraine. CBS's Cami McCormick.
Lithuania's Foreign Minister Gabrielius Landsbergis.
It's imperative to send all the weaponry that Ukraine needs in order to push the front forward, to reclaim the territories back.
The German government now says it won't stand in the way if Poland wants to send its Leopard tanks to Kiev. Poland has said it was willing to do so regardless.
A former high-ranking FBI counterintelligence official has been indicted on charges he helped a Russian oligarch in violation of American sanctions. Charles McGonigal was a former special agent in the New York office. Checking Wall Street, right now the Dow is up 318 points. The S&P is up 57. This is CBS News.
Nobody should have to pay for one-size-fits-all insurance coverage. Liberty Mutual customizes your car and home insurance, so you only pay for what you need. Liberty Mutual Insurance.
The Shaw 101 FM, Brookfield's choice for news talk radio. Streaming 24/7 at WAUKradio.com.
For Civic Media, I'm Terry Bell. Here's what you need to know. Wisconsin State Supreme Court race could determine the future of reproductive rights in Wisconsin. More than 1,000 people marched to the state capitol in Madison yesterday. It was part of a nationwide commemoration of the U.S. Supreme Court Roe v. Wade decision that legalized abortion 50 years ago. The Marquette poll shows 55% of people in Wisconsin are against last summer's ruling striking Roe down. One of the FBI's most wanted suspects is dead. Guards at the Milwaukee jail found Octaviano Juarez Coro's body in his cell yesterday morning. Juarez Coro spent years on the run after the execution-style shooting of his wife and 4 other people in 2006. In sports, the Bucks are at Detroit tonight. The Badgers travel to Northwestern. You're listening to The Shaw, 101 FM, WAUK, 540 AM.
It's a new year, and because we're excited about our new and still growing Civic Media network of radio stations, it's time to do something really big. How does a $1 million advertising giveaway sound to you? Our celebration is your chance to work with Civic Media's amazing sales team, creating a radio advertising campaign promoting your business for free. Save the date. The $1 million advertising giveaway is only happening on Thursday, January 26th. Full details on our website, civicmedia.us/million.
The Devil's Advocates.
Aaron Mostovsky, who rioted at the U.S. Capitol on January 6th, was dressed as Captain Caveman. QAnon shaman meets Law and Order?
Right. I mean, he pulled it off a whole lot better than Aaron Mostovsky.
Well, let me read a quote from the judge in this case. I hope you'll leave some of this fantasy world behind. Mostovsky was sentenced to 8 months in prison.
Looking at the guy, he might be one who loses his mattress on the first day. Breaking news.
Follow the Devil's Advocates on Facebook and Twitter.
The Devil's Advocates.
Mitch McConnell did make a public statement, right? After he voted to acquit, oh, nothing says the president can't be prosecuted. Set the example for your caucus.
Convince your caucus as to why the man is not fit to serve. How do you not use your leadership to say, you guys, this is crazy. We can't do this, and here is exactly why. Because now of the 2 major political parties, one of them is under the thumb of a fascist insurrectionist.
Follow the Devil's Advocates on Facebook and Twitter.
The Shaw, 101 FM, WAUK, 540 AM, Waukesha's only news talk station.
As Goes Wisconsin with Kristen Bry is an independent product and has a joint sales agreement with Civic Media. Enjoy.
We have free ad space that we want to give to small businesses across Wisconsin. Save the application date on Thursday, January 26th only. And you can find it on the Civic Media website, civicmedia.us. You can also find it on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. It's a friendly competition inside the Civic Media network of our hosts. So for this giveaway, be sure to tell them that you heard it from As Goes Wisconsin, Jane Matnair, and Kristen Bry.
Moving Wisconsin forward, one joke at a time. This is Kristen Bry with As Goes Wisconsin.
Yada, yada, yada.
Hello, Wisconsin. Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. Thank you for joining us during the 1 o'clock fun hour. As always, you can join the conversation at 844-967-2789. I am Kristen Bry. She is Jane Matnair. And like I said, this is the fun hour. So more pop culture, human interest. This is kind of the hour that maybe it's a little less political, though everything's a little political.
Well,
so
it slips in sometimes.
Because later in this hour at 1:30, we talk about things slipping in or being secretive.
Yeah.
Sundance happened this last weekend. And at the very last minute, a new documentary was added to the lineup and then immediately was sold out because it was basically a secret, like a very well-kept secret. Who thought that those could even exist anymore?
Especially in Hollywood.
Especially in Hollywood. But a Brett Kavanaugh sexual assault documentary premiered at Sundance, and they managed to keep it a secret until it was live. So we're going to talk about that and some of the details of that documentary and how it made itself into Sundance. Before that, we'll talk about 5 more things you can do to slightly improve your life without really trying. But to start off this hour, if you liked the vagina talk last week, you're going to like this.
You're going to love this.
If you hated it, you may hate this too, but we're going for it.
It's a reality of life.
It is the reality of life. And it's another reason to, if you do not get your period, to have sympathy for those of us who do. And if you do, another reason just to be like, God, really? So had you heard of this company before, Jane?
Never.
So it was hard to live in New York and not know this company. So the company is called Thinx. THINX.
Okay.
And they had very clever advertising that you would see kind of all over the subway. Mostly on the subway is where I would see it. And I think just because of my typical, things that I read and Jezebel and different like feminist outlets, like I knew the brand. And it's period underwear. And so it's basically underwear that is reusable, that's washable, but that is also absorbent. We'll put it that way.
Great.
And as we now talk a lot about PFAS, and we talked a lot about it last week and how headline after headline, it's in our water, it's in our fish, it's in our makeup, and now it might be in Thinx underwear. So as if we didn't have enough to deal with, right? So the company has settled a class action lawsuit. So they still deny that there is these kinds of chemicals in the product, but they did settle. So
isn't that easily provable?
I don't know. So this is kind of what I read about it. So they've settled a class action lawsuit alleging the brand's reusable period underwear contains potentially harmful chemicals known as PFAS. And a reminder, PFAS linked to infertility, lower immune systems, cancer. And so the company denied the allegations in the suit, but then agreed to partly reimburse customers who qualify, which where I read this, there's a link, so I can put that in today's notes if you are a customer and concerned about this. And so the company says that PFAS aren't in their product design, but I don't know. I feel like when there's a settlement, sometimes it leaves, it's like if you were totally in the clear, why would you settle? Especially for a company that's not like this is like a Fortune 500 company, right? So, but the problem is it's also a company that marketed their products as organic, sustainable, and non-toxic. So it's one thing if you didn't read the terms of service and were buying these products, but as far as like false advertising of what is in them, but it also makes sense because everything we know about what PFAS chemicals are used for is for like water resistance, water repellent type products, which you'd imagine a period resistance reusable underwear would have. So it just comes back to the bigger picture beyond what this is. I was not a user of these. I just remember the ads. And it's just another story though that just feels, it's so hard to be a person who gets your period. You know what I mean? It's just like the products available, like pads and tampons create a lot of waste. And those, if they're bleached and everything, have their own toxicity that, can be problematic. There's menstrual cups, which are cost effective, but can be messy for some people. There's also, I think Wisconsin is one of these, unless it changed in the last year, but there's still also a pink tax. There's also an increased sales tax on these products. And so it's like to also have this, which was because it was not like protection. It was the replacement of a pad or tampon. And, it was cost saving. It was supposedly supposed to be eco-friendly.
And really the first advancement, not much has changed.
No.
In decades and decades and decades.
Oh, yeah. And there was also the tampon shortage last year. Remember that? Michael actually for my birthday gave me a box of tampons because he said there's a shortage. So this is how much I love you. And but since the FDA doesn't require companies to list all the individual ingredients in tampons and pads. Do you know that?
No.
So
why on earth not? What, you only have to list the first 5?
I don't know. I think it's the same thing with makeup, but that was the same thing as we were talking about last week with the studies that have been done on makeup. And most of those makeup companies don't list all of the ingredients in the makeup because they don't have to.
That seems problematic to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
So, basically the advice that I've read in this is your options to stay clear of products that could be problematic is anything that has a fragrance, try to stay away from. Anything that is whitened or has like been dyed a certain color.
Okay.
It doesn't look like it's natural.
Natural. Sure.
So if you kind of stay away from those things, it can help reduce your exposure to potentially harmful chemicals. But you can also call your lawmakers and try to push for more transparency on stuff like this.
That would be nice.
I guess New York passed a law that requires ingredients to be listed on period product packaging in the state, but there's still a long way to go. It was just, what's unfortunate is because specifically the CEO of this company is a woman who everything in New York, like I think her reputation, she's very eccentric, obviously has big ideas, but it kind of goes back to the cross section that like the idea of a feminist company to me, and I don't think I'm alone here, is an oxymoron.
Why is that?
Because I think some of the feminists, like to be a for-profit company, and to be a successful for-profit company, ultimately makes you make decisions that combat what is best for your bottom line and what is actually best for your customers, your employees, how you make your product.
Right.
And it's because she, I forgot what her name is, but I remember reading about her. She was kind of clumped into this like group of high-powered, innovative women CEOs with these feminist companies, and then kind of how all of them categorically end up having some kind of story written about them of how they didn't really live up to the title of, feminist CEO who can do, have these products that are good and do good. And ultimately they're still capitalists at the end of the day.
Is it Maria Mullen?
Is that? I think CEO.
That's who came up when I, after Thinx's founder dramatically left.
I'm talking about the founder.
Oh, okay.
Because the founder left because she had some other scandal as far as potentially, I think she was
sexual harassment or
yes,
something
in front of employees. And so, anyways, PSA for anyone who is potentially using these products, but also PSA in general of just knowing what is available and safe for you to use with something that you inevitably have to deal with monthly until you don't. But
for a couple decades,
at least we don't have to I don't know. Sometimes I feel like we're missing out when the expectation was we could just go sit in a hut for the full week and just chill out for a while and not be forced to do anything. The red tent, is that what it was called?
Yes, but there was the whole superstition, and there was a lot of stuff that went along with. Just
so we don't want to take a step back.
Think going back to that is necessarily a step in the right direction.
Sounds kind of nice though. You're like, oh, you're just gonna leave me alone for a week.
That's not so bad.
You still get paid? Cool. Cool. All right. Well, if you have thoughts on that, or maybe thoughts on products that you recommend in this vein, let us know. 844-967-2789. That is 844-96-PARTY. Coming up on As Goes Wisconsin, 5 more things that can improve your life without really trying. This is As Goes Wisconsin.
I know we'll never forget. Smoke on the water, a fire in the sky. Smoke on the water.
What are the governor's priorities for Wisconsin? Tony Evers will lay out his second-term plans during his State of the State address January 24th. You can hear it live on your local Civic Media radio station. Will abortion rights, Medicaid expansion, and legalizing marijuana be the top issues? Your favorite hosts also provide insight by breaking down the governor's address. The State of the State address live Tuesday, January 24th at 7 p.m. here on your local Civic Media radio station, streaming on the Civic Media app.
Cardinal put out these weird, sad videos interviewing incapacitated elders in their nursing homes that don't have the ability to say, don't use me as your political prop.
If they are what you say they are, then you shouldn't be doing it how you did it.
Yes, it was the kids using the parents as props. Well, my old man hasn't talked since 76. Of course he would have voted for Trump. That's the evidence. Videos. People that can't talk.
It is wrong. It's absolutely wrong.
Check out the entire podcast library at darnwi.com.
My mother was very familiar with her neighborhood, but one day she stopped at the stop sign and she wasn't even really sure where she was at.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
Fear you may be missing out? We're always streaming on TuneIn and the Civic Media app. Enjoy listening live or catch up by finding the podcast at civicmedia.us or wherever you enjoy listening to your podcasts.
Here's your updated forecast on the Shaw. Sunshine mixed with clouds at times this afternoon, with daytime highs approaching 31. Winds out of the southwest 10 to 15 miles an hour. Lows level off around 24 tonight. Cloudy skies expected. Overcast skies again tomorrow. Daytime highs approaching 32. 1 to 3 inches of snow Wednesday through Wednesday night. For Civic Media, I'm meteorologist Eric Height. Currently, it's 27 degrees.
The Shaw 101 FM, your fix for progressive talk. From Big Bend to Menominee Falls. Always streaming at WAUKradio.com.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin on the Civic Media Network. Thank you for listening wherever you are listening on your lunch. I guess it's not lunch hour. Is it? Maybe it's some people's lunch hour.
Could be a little later lunch.
Yeah. Well, whatever you're doing right now. Thanks for listening. And we're going to continue on another 5 things you can do to improve your life without really trying.
Yeah.
This
Easy
is
stuff.
easy stuff. Some of it's easier than others, as we've found.
True.
But we've been reading 5 to 10 of these a day. It's a list from The Guardian that was 100 ways to slightly improve your life without really trying. And some have been good. Some I've started. Some I haven't. Still not bringing fruit to work.
Yeah. Me neither.
Yeah. But we are on 66.
All right.
So I think I timed this I think we balanced this out that it's going to take us through the end of the month.
Right.
And then I don't know. I guess if you have thoughts, if you like having one of the segments of the show, even if it's short, be a self-improvement type pick me up, let us know. Because maybe we'll, I don't think the internet is lack for self-improvement tips or things to.
We can find stuff.
Things to work on. So if you like this, let us know. 844-967-2789. That's 844-96-PARTY. And we will keep it rolling even once we've exhausted the list of 100 things.
Exactly.
So, all right. 66. Don't save things for best. Wear them, enjoy them.
Absolutely.
What do you mean? So don't save things for quote best. What does that mean?
Well, that's like having the beautiful set of china that you only bring out once a year.
Oh.
What are you saving it for? What are you waiting for? You have this wonderful I inherited my mother's china.
Do you use it?
I use it. I'm trying to use it more. Certainly not daily, only because you can't put that stuff in the dishwasher.
Yeah.
But it's, what are you hanging on to that special candle for? What are you hanging on to that pair of shoes for? Don't wait. Tomorrow you could get hit by a bus.
That's true.
Light the candle. Wear the shoes.
All right. You're a big fan of this one.
I am.
All right. I'm trying to think if there's anything I'm saving
that you're
for a
sitting on?
special occasion. I don't think that's usually my MO. I think I'm more likely the one to accidentally drink the really nice bottle of wine and be like, I was saving that. I was like, oh, sorry.
Oops.
All right. Number 67. I think you and I can both get on board with this. Whether we're good at it or not is another thing, but sing.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. I think the Jingle Bells rendition was just really out of my range. I'm not a great singer, but I'm maybe not as bad as I sometimes make myself out to be. There's people who are worse singers than me.
There are people who are far worse than you. And
But-
I agree. It's your range. You got to know your range.
Yeah. And so I still sing in the car. I really lip sync more than I sing.
Oh, do you?
Oh, yeah.
I sing in here all the time.
Do you really?
I do.
See, that soundproofing really works. I don't hear you sing.
Good.
But yeah, sing in your car, sing in the shower, sing at karaoke.
Sing a song, sing it long, sing it proud.
I truly think, I wish, and if you know of any in the Southeast Wisconsin area, because I know of karaoke places, but I really like the Korean karaoke places where you and your friends get your own room. Because there's something about karaoke nights where you're listening to other people sing who aren't great. Listening to other people sing who are really good at karaoke, I'm down. But, and then they pick the wrong song. The thing with the strategic part of karaoke is not, like, singing Three Dog Night, Joy to the World, is a terrible karaoke song because it just repeats itself for basically 3 minutes. And you're like, oh, this is not what I signed up for. I just have to, okay, can we cut it? But when you're with your friends and it's just you and your friends, then everyone gets into it more.
Right.
And I haven't found a place that you can book your private rooms.
That would be a ball.
Yeah, that would be really fun.
Definitely.
Civic Media Christmas party next year?
Oh, karaoke machine.
There you go.
We're on it.
All right, number 68. Think about your posture. Don't slouch and don't cross your legs. I was doing all of those things just now. Don't cross your legs, really.
It's a circulation issue, I think.
I sit here like Indian style on this chair some days because I'm just fidgety. But all right, 69. Hang your clothes up, ideally on non-wire hangers because it's better for them.
Sure. I don't have a hanger preference. Do you?
I like the felt, the really skinny felt hangers because then things don't fall off of them because of the felt kind
They're
of.
a little grippy.
A little grippy. All right. Can't wait to see your reaction to this one.
Oh, goody.
Number 70. Skinny dip with friends.
Not a chance.
Ever? You've never gone skinny dipping with your friends?
Decades ago. And it was a mistake then.
Why was it a mistake then?
Because people laugh at you.
What? Who laughed at you? Your friends laughed at you?
My friends.
Just snorted a little bit. That's really?
Yeah.
I'm sorry that happened to
Well,
you.
that's okay. I was 16.
I can't believe they laughed at you.
I'm almost over it.
Clearly. You never skinny dipped ever again. You never did it out of spite back at them. As almost.
I don't think I ever did it again.
This just took a much sadder turn than I was expecting from a skinny dip
I'm
prompt.
fine. It's fine. No one needs to see that anyway. Trust me.
All right. Well, I would skinny dip with friends still. Maybe not in Lake Michigan right now, but another warmer pool of water potentially. All right. Well, when we come back, a new shocking secret. This whole documentary was made in secret.
This is a crazy story.
Everyone had to sign NDAs, and just in Hollywood, and pulling off this kind of surprise and secret movie doesn't happen very often. So when we come back, we're going to talk about the secretly made Brett Kavanaugh sexual assault documentary that premiered at Sundance called Justice. Stay with us. This is As Goes Wisconsin.
Bit by bit, your love sneaks away from me. Oh yeah. Whoa, whoa.
WAUK 540 AM, Franklin's choice for News Talk Radio. Streaming 24/7 at WAUKradio.com.
CBS News Brief. Authorities are still searching for a motive for the mass shooting in Monterey Park, California, but Congresswoman Judy Chu offered some relief to residents.
What I want to do here is to say to the community, feel safe. You are no longer in danger because this shooter is gone.
The shooter killed himself after killing 10 people. Jury selection begins today in South Carolina in the trial of former attorney Alex Murdaugh, who's accused of killing his wife and 22-year-old son. WCSC TV's Katie Kamen.
Both the state and the defense will be sifting through dozens of men and women, asking them questions about their relationship with the Murdaugh family, whether they can remain impartial throughout the entire trial.
And tax season officially starts today. Here's CBS's Sarah Ewall-Weiss.
The IRS anticipates those who file electronically without issue will get their refunds within 21 days.
CBS News Brief. I'm Monica Ricks.
The Shaw 101 FM, New Berlin's choice for news talk radio. Streaming 24/7 at WAUKradio.com.
For Civic Media, I'm Jane Madner with your headlines. More than 1,000 workers in Racine, Burlington, and in Iowa getting back on the job after a 9-month strike. United Auto Workers Union members were fighting for raises to help cover soaring inflation and increases in healthcare costs. Based in the United Kingdom, CNH Industrial employs more than 37,000 people around the world. Their third quarter profits jumped 22% last year to $559 million. No one was hurt when blades in the top portion of a wind turbine collapsed at the Butler Ridge Wind Farm in Dodge County near Herman on Wednesday night. However, there is a large crater from the impact. NextEra Energy Resources owns the turbine and is working to determine the cause of the collapse, as well as ensure the other turbines on the property are safe. You're listening to The Shaw 101 FM, WAUK 540 AM.
What are the governor's priorities for Wisconsin? Tony Evers will lay out his second-term plans during his State of the State address January 24th. You can hear it live on your local Civic Media radio station. Will abortion rights, Medicaid expansion, and legalizing marijuana be the top issues? Your favorite hosts also provide insight by breaking down the governor's address. The State of the State address live Tuesday, January 24th at 7 p.m. here on your local Civic Media radio station, streaming on the Civic Media app.
Are you dreading going into work every day? Do you want a career where you can earn more and feel appreciated? If you answered yes, then Sigma Castings, a division of Sigma Engineered Solutions in Marquezan and Jackson, is your answer. They are more than a company. They are a family of dedicated experts that span the continents. Here are a few ways they make you feel appreciated. Entry-level pay is $18 an hour with regular performance reviews. After 90 days, you get 80 hours of vacation plus 11 paid holidays. They will give you a $2,000 sign-on, stay-on bonus. They offer a robust benefit package with low premiums and great coverage, and their 401k will blow you away. Now hiring first shift, Monday through Friday, 5 a.m. till 2 p.m. Start your new career today at Sigma Castings in Marquezan and Jackson. Find them on Indeed or call 920-260-8560 and wake up happy to go to work.
What is dedication?
I think a parent's job is to protect our children, but also prepare them for the world so they become good, kind human beings.
That's dedication. Find out more at fatherhood.gov.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin with Kristen Bry. We got Jane Madner on the board. No matter where you're listening across the Civic Media Network or on the Civic Media app, thank you for tuning in. If you miss any part of today's show, you can always listen to it as a podcast, which you can find on asgoeswisconsin.com/listen or Apple, Stitcher, Spotify. We actually, it gets posted through the Civic Media Network.
Right.
And so the backlog of when things get posted for review or numbers and stuff like that, I don't have the login for that because it's under the Civic Media umbrella. But it was made aware to me on Friday some of the really great reviews that we already have on So at Apple, you can actually write a review.
Okay.
Versus I think on Spotify, you can just star it, like give it a 5
if you like
out of 5 stars. But some of the reviews that were left for us were really sweet.
Yeah, they were really, really
they were
nice.
really genuine and great. So if you're someone who left us a review that was nice,
yeah,
thank you
so much.
And if you want to leave us a review, we would love that. And so on Apple or Spotify, you can give us how many stars you think we deserve. And then on Apple, you can write an actual review and also give us how many stars you think we should get. But and then as always, you can join the conversation at 844-967-2789. So I'm just fascinated by this story because the detail, like putting on any kind of festival is a huge undertaking.
No doubt.
Like I've been to some film festivals, I've been to a comedy festival, but the amount of locations you need to secure, the timing of everything, who's going where, what the screenings and the parties and the people, and especially you like take over a town, so like Sundance takes over Park City,
right?
And to have be able to either pull the strings or however they pulled this off was no easy feat. But a documentary about the sexual misconduct allegations surrounding Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh debuted at Sundance Friday night, and but it was only submitted on Wednesday.
Real last minute.
And so the submissions for like probably, as far as film festivals in the United States, there's basically Sundance and Tribeca, I would say, are the two biggest ones. Obviously, globally, there's Toronto, there's Cannes, there's yeah. But Sundance in the United States is like
big deal,
the big one. And so the fact that they even allowed such a late, the people at Sundance seeing it, liking it, and then making time and room for it to then premiere 2 days later, and then also have a sold out crowd. But they did have, it was secured by armed guards, which I also think is not usual for a film premiering at Sundance. So it's been 5 years since this all happened.
It's hard to believe.
It's like, in certain ways, it sounds like not that long ago. I don't know.
But it feels like a decade ago in some ways.
Yeah, but it
really does.
It was 5 years ago when Brett Kavanaugh was confirmed. And also the allegations of sexual misconduct by Dr. Christine Blasey Ford and Deborah Ramirez. And also the 4,500 other tips to the FBI that were basically just ignored. So the documentary is called Justice, and it's largely focused on how the FBI just totally botched the investigation.
Or did they just, it doesn't even sound like they tried.
And I guess that's more of what this film is about. So it was sold out on Friday, and it was only showed to Sundance execs that Wednesday. And the director, Doug Liman, I think it's Liman, said this was the kind of movie where people are terrified. And he said he's addressed the crowd before the documentary started. He said that people that chose to participate in this movie are heroes. And I think mostly he didn't really put any of Dr. Christine Blasey Ford did talk to him, but from what I read, he ended up not using. There's like an exchange, but most of the things I think they said in that interview, he ended up not using because she's already been terrorized.
So the woman's had to move. I mean, numerous times because of all the death threats.
Yeah, but testimonials from Ramirez. So this was the first time she told her story on camera. It was also friends of Blasey Ford, and then corroborating evidence that the FBI failed to follow up or even fully investigate. And so it's all basically never before heard recordings, and also one of Kavanaugh's Yale classmates talks in it. Even corroborates Ramirez's story. So, the guy who directed it, Doug Liman. So he is not necessarily a documentary. Like he's not Sharon Leese, right? It was like, I'm a documentarian.
Right.
He's made Mr. and Mrs. Smith and like The Bourne Identity and other big blockbuster type movies. And so as far as I understand, he funded this whole thing because he wanted to keep it so secret and even the making of it. It's not, there's like no production company. There was nothing behind it. It was just him going out and making it. And he worked with investigative reporters. He also ended up working with veteran producers, Amy Hurdy, who, did you ever see The Hunting Ground?
No.
Do you know what it's about?
No.
Oh. When we talk about movies and whether or not you should feel good after you see a movie, it's a documentary, but it's basically about the rampant sexual assault that happens on college campuses and how hard it is to prove and how different schools and universities deal with it. I saw it back in 2017. I think is when I first saw it, maybe 2018. But it's very good. It's very hard to watch, but he worked with Amy Hurdy and Liz Garbus, who also has worked on different documentaries, and they made it in secret. And they spoke to journalists, they spoke to lawyers, they spoke to psychologists, they spoke to classmates. And so it sounds like it's a pretty, I didn't actually see any reviews. I think the story so far has been the fact that they even pulled this off. And it sounds like it's as much of an indictment on the FBI and their handling of this as it is on Brett Kavanaugh himself. But will you see it when it's available?
I will.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And there's an article that I found in the Washington Post that said within a half hour of the news getting out, Lyman said in a post-screening Q&A that his team had already started hearing from people who had sent the FBI tips before Kavanaugh's confirmation. So they're not done yet. The film is done, but now they're getting more tips about Brett Kavanaugh.
But go ahead. What did you say?
The only thing I can think too is they must have an army of lawyers, because I'm just wondering about libel and slander and all of those things. These are all allegations. But again, I'm sure they spoke to some really good legal representatives. That's what I mean. I would imagine
they had to have understood what their legal ramifications for this were going to be, because I don't think you put all your own money and this much effort into something where you're like, well, this is going to get me sent to jail.
Right.
I would imagine that in working with other people who have made things like if you think of, once you see The Hunting Ground, you kind of, because this was talking about actual cases that were never, while charges were potentially sometimes filed, but there was never anything that ever stuck. And that was part of the point of the movie, right?
Right.
And so you're still documenting people's their experience and their version. Like I think about this because I guess there was also, the salacious. Think about that there's just a new documentary that came out about Glee and kind of the darker side of Glee that has now had 3 different cast members die since either when the show, with Corey Monteith, the show was still going, but the other 2 after the show was ended. And I'm not going to watch it. Like I don't care enough, but there's a new docuseries kind of talking about
the dark side
of Glee. And I think for any of these, there's some kernel of truth, and sometimes they're more salacious and maybe more exaggerated, but I mean, it's not legal, right? It's not like they're charging people. It's just, I don't know. I don't know nearly enough about it to say what legally you can or cannot say when it comes to these kinds of investigative documentaries.
Sure.
But it'll be interesting to see what kind of distribution it gets, because that's typically what happens at these festivals.
Isn't that why you go there to sell it?
It's independent movies, and you hope to find a buyer who will, if it's Netflix or one of the streaming services, buy it to put on their platform, or if it's a bigger production company, buys it to put into movie theaters. And so I guess we'll see when it will be available for more people to be able to see it. But I think the hope is that it triggers more outrage. And that's what Amy Hurdy, the producer, said during the Q&A. She said, I do hope this triggers outrage. I do hope that this triggers action. I do hope this triggers additional investigation with real subpoena power. And we'll see if that happens.
I just don't Kavanaugh's not going to leave the Supreme Court. It's a lifetime appointment. He's not going anywhere.
But I also wonder, is there anything that could happen as far as, because this is the same kind of disregard that the FBI took when they were investigating the Michigan State sexual abuse.
With Nassar.
Yeah, with Nassar. And so as far as the, all the testimony they got from all of those gymnasts, and they basically were like, nah, we don't believe you, and never did anything about it.
Yeah.
And so if there's even something to be said or done inside of, the FBI, who I guess everyone's just mad at the FBI for different reasons now, right?
I have the exact same thought. It's like they're in everybody's crosshairs now.
Like who's actually, besides the people who have worked in our FBI, the left's mad at you, the right's mad at you. Like the right wants to defund you.
Yeah. Yeah. Not a good spot to be in.
But it was interesting. And so I will definitely watch it when it comes out. But some of the other interesting stories that came out of Sundance, I thought, was, Marlee Matlin.
Oh, sure.
So
Children of a Lesser God.
Yes. So she was a juror along with two other people. And there was a movie called Magazine Dreams. And Sundance kind of dropped the ball and they failed to provide captioning. And so she and the other two judges just walked out.
Well, that's kind of glaring.
Yeah. And so jurors for the Sundance's U.S. dramatic competition walked out of the premiere of Magazine Dreams on Friday night over an incident in which the festival failed to provide adequate captioning for deaf and hearing impaired audience members, including juror Marlee Matlin. And this was after they've been, I guess, under scrutiny for this, because if you think about it, all the international fests, there's captioning in multiple different languages, right? Because it's an international film festival, and these movies that are made in all these different languages, there's not the expectation that you read, you know all these languages. And I guess Sundance has kind of been like behind the ball on providing that same kind of access, even though this year they asked people who were who were RSVP'd to go to this, like all the shows, like if you needed captioning or if you needed any kind of auditory assistance. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And it's also just, I kind of think good for her to be like, I am a famous deaf person. Again, it goes to the amount of detail that has to go into festivals. Right. I'm not making excuses for them because that feels like a big one, but someone got fired over that. That's all I'm going to say.
And of all places for them not to be sensitive about things like this, Sundance of all, right? Really? Come on, you guys.
You'd think, but I guess they kind of dropped the ball. Did you ever have any other interesting stories coming out of Sundance? No, that was it. All right. Well, when we come back, we'll wrap up today's show. Maybe we'll talk more about rats because we didn't do enough of that yet. This is As Goes Wisconsin.
Missed your favorite show live on air? It's easy to find what you enjoy wherever you listen to podcasts, including Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts. And we're always streaming on TuneIn and the Civic Media app.
It makes me smile and you have a piano, but if you can play the Peanuts theme song.
Oh
my gosh.
You know he can.
Yes, on the Devil's Radio. Listen to Max Inc. Radio Saturday nights, 6 p.m. to midnight on the Civic Media Radio Network.
Hey, this is Jim Santel. I am the host of Morning Cannolis. Every single Saturday morning from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., we talk about the major stories in law, in government, and the aspiration for justice in America. Delighted to have you join, call in, and be a part of our discussion right here on the networks of Civic Media.
Dad, I picked up your pills, made your lunch, and your laundry is done.
When you care for a loved one, you take care of everything. But are you taking care of yourself? Find free care guides at aarp.org/caregiving. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Here's your updated forecast on the Shaw. Sunshine mixed with clouds at times this afternoon, with daytime highs approaching 31. Southwesterly winds 10 to 20 miles an hour. Overcast skies tonight, lows level off around 24. Cloudy skies expected again tomorrow. High temperatures reach up to 32. 1 to 3 inches of snow Wednesday through Wednesday night. For Civic Media, I'm meteorologist Eric Height. Currently, it's 27 degrees.
A progressive voice from Beaver Dam to Kenosha. WAUK 540 AM. Always streaming at WAUKradio.com.
On your face, it's just priceless.
I'm trying to figure it out, because sometimes it's very obvious and sometimes it's not so obvious of what your little Easter egg tie-in is. So we'll get back to that. But for the audience, welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin with Kristen Bry. Reminder that this Thursday is the $1 million ad giveaway. So mark your calendars. You can go to civicmedia.us/million right now and send yourself a sign up to get a reminder when things are live. You can also add it to your calendar and it just puts it right on there for you. This technology, it's just makes things as simple as possible.
Yes.
But there's also an FAQ. So if you have more questions that obviously I cannot answer because we are live on the radio now, civicmedia.us/million, Thursday, January 26th, 9 a.m. We are giving away free advertising, and we want you to be part of it. So if you have a product, a service, is there anything else people can sell besides a product or a service?
Pretty much covers it, I think.
It's either a thing or someone's time.
Or a service,
yeah.
Yep.
And you have customers, and you want to reach more customers throughout Wisconsin, not just in Southeast Wisconsin or Central Wisconsin or Northern Wisconsin. Like, we're pretty much everywhere right now.
We are.
And if you don't need to cover everywhere, you just need to cover one region, you're also going to be able to tailor it to the region that you're going to want to reach. But the whole point of this is you're going to be able to work with our sales team to develop a campaign for what you're going to say on the ad, where it's going to play.
What your goal is.
So that we can demonstrate to you the value of radio ads. And we're doing it for free. So if you want to take advantage of this, you got to be ready, though. Thursday, January 26th. 9 a.m. $1 million ad giveaway. And when you're there, they're going to ask you who sent you. And we need you to say, Jane and Kristen. Jane and Kristen sent me. They talked about it a lot. They interrupted the usual programming time and time again so that they could talk about this thing. And I'm here and I'm ready. I'm ready for my free advertising. Because Thursday, it's by Friday, it's gone.
One day only.
One day only. All right, what's the story behind that song?
So we took a little detour much earlier in the show where we were talking about the rat movie.
Yeah.
Named Ben. So that is the theme song from that movie, sung by Michael Jackson.
A young Michael Jackson.
Michael Jackson. This is 1972. Yeah.
No, it sounded like a young woman. And it's that makes a lot more sense that it was like a young Michael Jackson.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So what were the lyrics?
It's about a boy and his rat. So there's a lonely boy, and I know I'm not the only one who remembers this movie. 844-967-2789. Tell me that you remember this terrible movie. Lonely boy named Danny meets a rat who becomes his best friend. And when bullies try to attack him, he has his army of rats that will attack the bullies and take over the world.
And of course, things tend to go badly at some point with the rat colony fighting back.
Oh, the sequel
to Willard.
The way you were describing it, I was like, there is some movie with the rats and they remade it. So this was Ben is the sequel
to Willard.
Okay.
Classic.
So is this kind of like, what genre does this fall under?
This would be horror.
It is horror.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how old were you when you saw this?
I was 12.
So was it terrifying? Did it make you hate rats? Did it really set the...
It certainly didn't endear me to rats. Sure, it's all fine when you're friends with your rat until your rat gets its own army and then it comes back to attack you.
Does it turn on Ben? Or is Ben always their king? Ben always the rat king?
Ben survives, makes his way back to Danny. Danny tends to the injured Ben. But I think Ben dies in the end. The rat. I know, it's so sad.
It's so funny watching movies like that and what it could, like the impression it gives to you
as
for
a kid.
that animal. Like think about a couple weeks ago, maybe the end of December, we were talking about the quote from Steven Spielberg and him saying how much he regrets Jaws being the reason people are terrified of sharks and the increase of the like not extinction of, but basically like shark hunting and killing sharks. And because so many people, I mean, I was terrified of sharks. So I saw Jaws granted it came out well before I was born, but we still watched it growing up. And I was definitely afraid of sharks when I was a kid. And if
I'm still afraid of sharks.
Yeah. And if you watch this as a kid, you're like, yeah, I want nothing to do with rats. I'm trying to think of other movies that, what's really the inverse of this that I always think is hilarious. So Peppa the Pig, the show, it's like a children's show.
Right.
And there's one episode where Peppa becomes friends with a spider. And the whole point of that episode is that spiders are our friends and why we shouldn't be afraid of them. And that episode cannot air in Australia. Because in Australia, you actually need to be afraid of spiders.
Yeah. They have some really, really big, really poisonous spiders in Australia.
Really poisonous spiders.
Yeah.
And so basically like the official statement was something along the lines of, yeah, we can't be teaching our children to be friends with spiders on this continent / country because it will kill them. Yeah. It will certainly kill them. We have a good friend who he and his wife, she's from Georgia, but he's from Australia, and they were living in Milwaukee for a little while and now they've left. But they went back for the first time because Australia was shut down for so long.
Sure.
So they finally went back this year for like 3 weeks to see his family. And about every couple days, we got some kind of picture of a creature. And one, I think, included a spider that was the size of my hand. And I was like, all right, have fun down there.
It's a wonderful country. It really is. And the people are hilarious. But just about everything in the world that can kill you, you will find in Australia.
Which is even, because I've heard that of the Southeast with, snakes and scorpions and stuff, but I think it goes to a different level when you're in Australia as far as the
creepy crawlies.
The creepy crawlies. And then just kangaroos getting all over the place.
Kangaroos can hurt you too.
Yeah. All right. Well, that was a fun show.
On one happy outgoing note.
Yeah.
Sister and I went to see a movie yesterday called A Man Called Otto, starring Tom Hanks. It's wonderful.
My father-in-law saw it. He goes, if you want to see a movie that's going to make you laugh and cry, A Man Named Otto.
A Man Named Otto, based on a book, Swedish author. It was originally done in Swedish, which is also a wonderful movie. So if you need something that's going to make you feel not bad.
A little bit better?
Yeah.
You see it in the theater?
Yeah, I'll see it in the theater.
Fun. All right, well, stick around for Dueling Tangents with Luke and Brian. Unless you're listening to WXCO, then you got the Chad Holmes Show coming up next. Thank you for listening. Thank you for texting. Thank you for calling. This has been As Goes Wisconsin, and we'll be back tomorrow at 11 to do it all again.
I knew